Chapter 2748. Fruit of nurturing ways. When Jian Chen looked at them, many of the hallmasters and vice-hallmasters from the 9 other divine halls all looked at Jian Chen as well. The 2nd hallmaster Arna and the 10th hallmaster Feng Shui had mixed expressions, while the 7th hallmaster Getty smiled mockingly, taking full delight in his misfortune. The other hallmasters and vice-hallmasters were mostly indifferent. They were not affected by this much at all. Clearly, the 5th hallmaster Kuan Tian's loss of memory was no longer a secret among the 10 divine halls of the Dark Star race. Basically everyone knew about it. All of their reactions were similar to the 3 vice hallmasters of the 5th divine hall. They did not doubt Kuan Tian's identity at all. Instead, they found that this made perfect sense. They all knew about the horrors of the land of soul destruction. Kuan Tian had remained there for 3 whole years, without setting a foot out. If his soul was fine, that would be strange instead. That was because even they were not bold enough to remain in there for so long. Their souls were unable to endure the constant attack of the planetary beast slivers of consciousness over long periods of time. The only reason why they found that nothing was out of the ordinary was exactly because Kuan Tian's soul was injured. Kuan Tian, do you still remember the matters of the past? Do you remember who I am? Do you remember who these people are? As the 7th hallmaster Getty approached his teleportation formation, he did not forget to mock Kuan Tian. He smiled from ear to ear. He was delighted. Behind Jian Chen, Bing Yuan, Taro and Dou Wujin's expressions all became ugly. They were all from the 5th divine hall, so now that their hallmaster had been mocked, they all felt humiliated as well. However, they felt utterly helpless against the 7th hallmaster due to the tremendous disparity in their identities and strength. Jian Chen looked over. 2 vice hallmasters followed the 7th hallmaster. They were a 3rd heavenly layer and a 4th heavenly layer infinite prime. Aside from them, there was also a 2nd heavenly layer infinite prime who had ventured to the Dark Night City. On the other hand, out of his 5th divine hall, Bing Yuan was the weakest, a 1st heavenly layer infinite prime. Following him was Taro, a 2nd heavenly layer infinite prime. Dou Wujin was the strongest, at the 4th heavenly layer. In terms of strength, the 7th divine hall was indeed slightly stronger than the 5th divine hall. This hall master obviously knows you. You're the 7th hall master, Getty. However, I've heard that you've always worked against this hall master? Jian Chen glanced over without any intention of shying away as he sneered a little. He also spoke in a straightforward manner, without trying to bend his words. Ha ha ha, you can't say that. Why would I work against you? Getty laughed as he seemed to look down on Kuan Tian. His face basically told them that Kuan Tian had no right to oppose him. Though, you do seem quite a bit more confident after breaking through to the 6th heavenly layer, Kuan Tian. Ha 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 ha. As he laughed, Getty had already arrived in the teleportation formation with his 2 vice hallmasters. With a flash they were gone. The hallmasters and vice hallmasters from the 8 divine halls in the surroundings watched on indifferently. It was no longer anything strange to them for the 5th divine hall and 7th divine hall to have a little bit of conflict. In reality, it was not just the 5th divine hall and 7th divine hall that were on bad terms with one another out of the 10 divine halls. Some of the other divine halls were also on bad terms with one another. They would have their overt and covert struggles with each other too. However, these struggles would just be small skirmishes and small conflicts. They would only erupt on a small scale. It would never lead to battles to the death. Jian Chen had learnt about some of this from the 3 vice hallmasters. Jian Chen looked at where the 7th hallmaster Getty had vanished as he smiled mysteriously. He thought, in the recent 1,000 years, the Dark Star race is under the rule of Getty, and he's the sole reason behind the large-scale hunting of outsiders as well as the attack on the 100 Saint City. Looks like I need to make proper use of this identity as Kuan Tian. Jian Chen thought rapidly. From time to time, slivers of light due to his calculations and predictions would flash through his eyes. It was extremely obscure, having been purposefully hidden by him, so no one could sense it. After all, with his current strength, it was still quite easy for him to hide things from infinite primes. As he thought, Jian Chen had already entered the teleportation formation with Bing Yuan, Taro and Dou Wujin. As it lit up, the 4 of them vanished. Through the teleportation formation, Jian Chen traveled far away from the capital city, arriving in an unknown land in the Dark Star world. As soon as he was transported here, Jian Chen sensed extremely dense origin energy. The origin energy did originate from the Dark Star world. It belonged entirely to the Saints' world. The Dark Star world and the Saints' world were two different worlds, so the energy they possessed were different as well. People of the Dark Star race were unable to absorb energy from divine crystals for cultivation, but cultivators of the Saints' world could not absorb energy from this world either, completely relying on the divine crystals they brought with them to recover their strength. Now that he had entered an environment filled with origin energy, Jian Chen even felt like he had returned to the Saints' world. He looked around. There was no one around him from the 9 other divine halls. There were various flourishing plants as far as he could see. Every single one of them pulsed with rather powerful energy. They had already begun metamorphosizing into heavenly resources. As a matter of fact, it was possible to say that these plants have already become heavenly resources, but they were just too young so their grades were insufficient. Suddenly, powerful pulses of energy appeared from behind Jian Chen. The 3 vice hall masters who had come with him all struck out, condensing their energy into blades and cutting up the heavenly resources in the surroundings. With the 3 primordial realm experts at work, all of the heavenly resources that Jian Chen could see were cut up cleanly in just a while, turning the lush sea of greenery into empty plains. Jian Chen turned around and looked at the 3 of them in uncertainty. The 3 vice hall masters knew their hall master had forgotten everything, so one of them immediately explained, "Hall master, the medicinal garden is just up ahead. Because this place is far too close to the medicinal garden, the plants here end up growing so quickly due to energy leaking out of the medicinal garden. However, as long as these plants exist, they will constantly drain away the energy of the medicinal garden, which is why we have to clean up the plants here from time to time to prevent energy from being wasted." Jian Chen came to a realization. These plants, even the herbs that had already evolved to heavenly resources, were just weeds in the eyes of the Dark Star race. He could not help but expand the senses of his soul. Very soon, he discovered the 9 other hall masters in various other places, as well as the so-called medicinal garden of the Dark Star race. The medicinal garden was actually just a circular plot of land 100 kilometers across. The entire place was enveloped by a powerful formation as misty light churned around inside. The energy in there was extremely dense, so dense that it had already formed mist. As a matter of fact, some of it even condensed into droplets. From time to time, there would even be a light drizzle formed out of pure energy. The energy in the medicinal garden had already reached an extremely startling level. There were 10 teleportation formations constructed in the surroundings of the medicinal garden, which corresponded to the 10 divine halls. They had been surrounded by lush greenery as well, but now, they had all been reduced to flat land. Only a thick layer of tiny plant cuttings laid on the ground, pulsing with energy. There were formations underground which absorbed the energy of the plant cuttings and channeled it back into the medicinal garden. A fruit of nurturing ways? There's actually a fruit of nurturing ways in there? Suddenly, Jian Chen's mind shuddered. He could clearly see a tiny tree that had not been obscured by the mist-like energy in the center of the medicinal garden with the senses of his soul. The tree was only as tall as a man, but there was a thumb-sized fruit at the very top. Jian Chen had only read about fruit of nurturing ways from some ancient records in the Saints' world. This was the first time he had seen it in person. This was because fruits of nurturing ways were extremely rare in the Saints' world, so rare that they would be the stuff of legends even in the eyes of some primordial realm experts. It was extremely precious as well, so precious that even peak organizations with grand primes would fight over them. This was because the effects of the fruit of nurturing ways were just unbelievable. It did not nurture energy, but the ways of the world. It was said that once it was ingested, the ways of the world would be conjured before the person for them to comprehend. Jian Chen had even learned from the ancient records that people who ingested the fruit had an 80 to 90% of breaking through. What made it even more unbelievable was that not only was it effective on infinite primes and chaotic primes, it even had the same effect on grand primes. Once grand primes ingested the fruit, they would have an 80% chance at breaking through by a minor level of cultivation. The only issue was that the grade of fruit of nurturing ways that grand primes required was just too high. The fruit of nurturing ways is a god-tier heavenly resource. Heavenly resources are also split into 9 grades, which would also correspond to low grade, mid grade, high grade and supreme grade. Low grade fruit of nurturing ways were only effective on cultivators below the primordial realm, while mid grade were effective on infinite primes, high grade on chaotic primes and supreme grade on grand primes. The fruit of nurturing ways right in front of me has already reached the peak of mid grade. It's making its way into high grade. No, it's already begun to evolve. Once it finishes evolving, It will be a high-grade fruit of nurturing ways. Jian Chen's chest heaved as he struggled to maintain his composure. Chapter 2749. The cost of raising the value of a high-grade fruit of nurturing ways was indescribable, because just one of them could produce a chaotic prime. Of course, that was given that the person who ingested it had reached the 9th heavenly layer of infinite prime. A high-grade fruit of nurturing ways had an 80% chance to turn a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime into a chaotic prime. Chaotic primes were already enough to become ancestors of many large clans in the Saints' world. They were ancient experts who ruled over a region. Of course, even if they were chaotic primes, a high grade of fruit of nurturing ways would still be effective on them. However, the increase in their cultivation would not be a major realm, but a minor realm. In the Saints' world, every minor level of cultivation after chaotic prime required tremendous hardships, requiring an accumulation of comprehension over an enormous period of time. To some people, it might have even been where they would stop at for the rest of their lives, unable to take another step forward unless they experienced some great fortuitous encounter. However, the various difficulties posed to them could be easily resolved with a high-grade fruit of nurturing ways, saving them countless years of difficult cultivation. That only demonstrated the value of a fruit of nurturing ways. Turns out the fruit of nurturing ways is evolving. It requires tremendous amounts of energy to evolve. The rapid depletion in energy is what triggered the formation's warning. Dou Wujin gazed into the depths of the medicinal garden as he muttered to himself behind Jian Chen. The fruit of nurturing ways has been tended to by our entire race for so long. We've finally waited until it's evolving to the high grade. Since it's almost ripe, the great ceremony of our race should be brought forward as well. It's just a pity that we can't keep waiting until something as precious as that can grow until the supreme grade. If it reaches the supreme grade, the ways it nurtures will change qualitatively. Supreme grade? You better stop daydreaming. It basically took the entire race to raise the fruit of nurturing ways to high grade. With the ability of our race, it's nowhere near enough to raise it to supreme grade. We'll have to send it to the Saints' world and use the abundant resources of the Saints' world, and only then can we raise it to the supreme grade. The three vice hallmasters discussed behind Jian Chen. However, their gazes towards the fruit of nurturing ways were peaceful and utterly unfazed, nowhere as excited as Jian Chen was. This was because they all understood that the fruit of nurturing ways was an item that only the Dark Star Emperor could savor. No matter how precious it was, it had nothing to do with them. Since the fruit of nurturing ways is so previous, our race must have paid a tremendous price for it. Jian Chen stood with his arms crossed as he asked in a very casual manner. When they heard that, Bing Yuan, Taro and Dou Wujin all seemed to smile. One of them said, "Hallmaster, before you lost your memory, you could not help but sigh whenever the fruit of nurturing ways was mentioned. You would say that the fruit of nurturing ways had appeared within our race as a blessing of our ancestors, sympathy from the great ways and protection from fate." "Oh, did I? Looks like I've really forgotten everything." Jian Chen was rather surprised. He continued, "Tell me in detail." Taro said, "Hallmaster, we did not get the fruit of nurturing ways from the outsiders through exchange. In reality, all of those clans in the outside world would have valued the fruit of nurturing ways like treasure. They would have never exchanged it with us. Now that I mention it, the way we obtained it was rather unimaginable. A weaker member of our clan killed an outsider over God who broke the rules and found it in his space ring. However, at the very beginning, it was just a seed. The person did not recognize it was the seed of fruit of nurturing ways. He could only sense that it was extraordinary, so he offered it up to higher authorities. In the end, the seed of the fruit of nurturing ways was passed up through the system, before falling into our gaze. Afterwards, it was recognized by the Emperor. Ever since then, our Dark Star race has basically devoted the entire race to raising this seed. The environment of our Dark Star race is not suited for the growth of the fruit of nurturing ways, so we obtained a tremendous quantity of precious special soil of the Saints' world from the outsiders through exchange. Our Dark Star race lacks the energy that the fruit of nurturing ways can absorb as it grows, so we obtained a large quantity of various divine crystals from the outsiders, using formations to draw out the energy from the divine crystals and replicate the environment of the Saints' world in the medicinal garden. There are various heavenly resources from the Saints' world planted in the medicinal garden now, such that some of them have even evolved to the god tier, but the medicinal garden was only created because of the fruit of nurturing ways. It's good that it's ripe. The fruit of nurturing ways basically gobbles up energy endlessly. In order to raise it, our dark star race would have to exchange with the outsiders for tremendous amounts of colored divine crystals yearly. If the colored divine crystals were converted to supreme-grade divine crystals, then the fruit of nurturing ways would basically consume over 10 million of them every year. It's taken over 60 million years for the fruit of nurturing ways to grow to its current level from a seed. Even Jian Chen was amazed by that. He felt surprised by the amount of resources the dark star race had poured into it. The dark star race would use up over 10 million supreme-grade divine crystals every year in order to raise the fruit of nurturing ways, and the fruit had grown for over 60 million years now. That was an astronomical sum of wealth. This sum was even several times more than all of the wealth Jian Chen had accumulated from destroying the peak organizations on the cloud plane. In order to raise the fruit of nurturing ways, the dark star race really has done everything it can, regardless of the cost, Jian Chen thought. However, he also understood that due to the special environment they were in, it was extremely difficult for members of the dark star race to break through. As a result, the dark star race placed far more importance in the fruit of nurturing ways than people of the saints' world. Afterwards, Jian Chen inspected the medicinal garden furniture. He discovered that aside from the fruit of nurturing ways, there was a large number of other heavenly resources planted there. These heavenly resources were all native to the saints' world, and many of them had reached God tier as well. When they had been brought in here by cultivators of the saints' world, they were all at the saint tier, because only grades below God tier could be brought into the dark star world. Afterwards, the dark star race planted and tended to them, which was why there were God tier heavenly resources now. Hall Master, the medicinal garden's been divided into 11 regions. The central region where the fruit of nurturing ways resides belongs to the Emperor alone, while the 10 regions around it are split among our 10 divine halls. We can freely plant various kinds of heavenly resources in our own regions. In other words, the heavenly resources in this region all belong to our 5th divine hall? Jian Chen swept past the region with the senses of his soul, before soon losing interest. The region that belonged to the 5th divine hall did have a few god-tier heavenly resources. These heavenly resources were treasured by the dark star race, but they were nothing in Jian Chen's eyes. What really enticed him was the fruit of nurturing ways planted in the distant center. Chapter 2750. Emergency in 100 Saint City. The entire medicinal garden is divided into 11 regions. The regions are separated from one another with formations. The formations for the regions of the 10 Divine Hall are powerful enough to stop attacks from infinite primes of the 6th or even 7th layer, while the formation in the center is the strongest. It would take quite the effort even for 9th heavenly layer infinite primes to get through it. The formations might be powerful, but in order to lock in the energy of the medicinal garden, these formations have been cast down using the methods of the saints' world. The energy that the formations absorb completely originates from divine crystals. Once these divine crystals run out, or the rate of depletion exceeds the replenishing rate, even the most powerful formations will collapse on themselves. Jian Chen carefully inspected the formation in front of him outside the medicinal garden as his lips gradually curled into a smile. He had already seen it through. Although the formation in the center of the medicinal garden could stop attacks from 9th heavenly layer infinite primes, it clearly did not have enough energy to last too long against attacks like that. As a matter of fact, from how the formation was set up, the rate at which the formation replenished energy was far lower than the rate at which a stronger infinite prime could deplete it. As a result, the formation would only be able to withstand a few heavy attacks before collapsing due to running out of energy. After all, this was the Dark Star world and not the Saints' world. If this was the Saints' world, powerful formations like this would be able to absorb energy endlessly from the Sea of Stars, so that it would constantly operate. They would be extremely difficult to destroy without absolute strength. The energy that the fruit of nurturing ways requires to evolve is so tremendous that it's several hundred times or even thousands of times greater than usual. This time, it'll really be painful for us. Dou Wujin seemed to be in pain as he sensed the depletion rate of energy in the medicinal garden from behind Jian Chen. Normally, we basically only replenish the divine crystals every decade, but at this rate, we probably have to replenish them every 10 days now. And, who knows just how long it'll take before the fruit of nurturing ways finishes evolving. Let's not talk about that for now. There's only enough energy in the medicinal garden for a few hours. Let's replenish the divine crystals quickly, said Taro. Afterwards, with a wave of his hand, a large pile of divine crystals immediately appeared out of nowhere, forming quite a pile on the ground in front of him. Most of the divine crystals were at the supreme grade, with a few colored divine crystals. They were basically all one or two colored. If all of them were converted to supreme-grade divine crystals, there would be at least 100 million of them there. Afterwards, Dou Wujin and Bing Yuan took out all of the divine crystals in their space rings as well. The Vice Hall Masters of the Divine Halls would personally come and replenish the divine crystals every 10 years, so the three of them possessed quite a lot of divine crystals on them. It was enough to fully replenish the medicinal garden once at the very least. With that, Jian Chen also looked through Kuan Tian's space ring. When he had first obtained the space ring, he discovered a large number of divine crystals in there, stacked together as a messy pile in an inconspicuous corner like garbage. Jian Chen was perplexed by this in the very beginning. He had no idea why a primordial realm expert like Kuan Tian would carry around such a large pile of divine crystals that were utterly useless to him. He could not use them for cultivation, and even if they were for exchange with the outsiders, there was no need for him to stoop to such a low level of hoarding divine crystals with his esteemed status as a hall master. However, Jian Chen understood now. As it turned out, Kuan Tian's divine crystals were for the medicinal garden as well. Moreover, when he extended the senses of his soul, he discovered that the 9th other hall masters all carried a large quantity of divine crystals on them too. Afterwards, Bing Yuan replenished the crystals. He opened a crucial point of the formation and poured all the divine crystals in there. Replenished, the formation in the crucial point immediately began to operate swiftly. It sucked out the energy from the divine crystals rapidly, keeping a small part of it for itself so it could continue operating and channeling the rest into the medicinal garden. The fruit of nurturing ways seemed to possess a certain level of intelligence. Upon sensing the increase in energy, its absorption rate immediately reached a new level. This directly led to a fierce storm of energy in the medicinal garden. The fruit of nurturing ways plundered the energy across the entire medicinal garden. It was like a bottomless hole, not only sucking energy from its own region, but even from the 10 other regions as well. The rate at which the fruit of nurturing ways absorbed energy increased once more. Now, the divine crystals that originally could last 10 days could only last 5. Sensing this, the 3 Vice Hall Masters behind Jian Chen and the 9th Hall Masters in the other regions all became extremely stern. Oh no! The fruit of nurturing ways is absorbing energy much faster than we originally anticipated. The divine crystals we've accumulated over these years probably won't be able to sustain it for too long. The senses of the souls of many primordial realm experts intertwined in the air as they communicated. Who knows how long the fruit of nurturing ways will take as well. At this rate, all of the divine crystals from our 10 divine halls can probably only last for a month. After that, we can only just watch as the fruit of nurturing ways fails its evolution. If the evolution fails, the entire tree will be destroyed. As a result, it has to succeed this time. I'll return to my divine hall immediately, and order my people to collect as many divine crystals as possible. This came from the 7th Hall Master, Getty. Yeah, let's go back. We need to exchange for some divine crystals as well, or our medicinal garden will probably shrivel up. The Hall Masters all began to make their return with their Vice Hall Masters. At the same time, a God King of the Dark Star race stood before the teleportation formation anxiously in the square before the 7th Divine Hall in the capital city, waiting for his Hall Master's return. The God King was a general that the 7th Hall Master had sent to the 100 Saints City. Beside the general were a few other God Kings who served in the 7th Divine Hall as officials. General Guan, what's happened with the 100 Saints City, seeing how you've personally come to report to the Hall Master? One of the God King officials smiled gently. However, the God King who had been referred to as General Guan was in no mood to make idle talk. He only stared at the teleportation formation anxiously as he said, "Just when is the Hall Master returning?" "General Guan, don't worry. The Hall Master normally never leaves for too long. He should be back very soon." As soon as he finished talking, there was a blinding flash of light from the teleportation formation, and the 7th Hall Master emerged with his 2 Vice Hall Masters. The Hall Masters of the 9 other divine halls returned as well in the meantime. "Hall Master, you finally returned." Getty's return immediately made General Guan's face light up. He rushed over to Getty and said, "Hall Master, there's bad news. Large numbers of outsiders have suddenly appeared near the 100 Saints City. They're leading a large number of God Kings to attack the city. The city is in desperate need of reinforcements." Chapter 2751. Jian Chen makes trouble when he heard that. Getty, who had just left the teleportation formation and was now making his way to the 7th Divine Hall, could not help but stop. He squinted his eyes as his lips gradually curled into a playful smile. They really do keep trying even after being defeated. This Hallmaster has already ordered for the teleportation formations to be sealed off, which has cut off the possibility for them to receive reinforcements from the outside world. I never thought the remaining people of the 100 Saint City would still be able to gather a force under such horrible circumstances, and to think that it's enough to threaten the army I've stationed in the 100 Saint City. They must be quite powerful. Getty was relaxed and he spoke with disdain. He did not take these outsiders seriously at all. But that's good too. We can use this opportunity to annihilate the organizations from the 100 Saint City in one fell swoop. Although our Dark Star race requires some outsiders to maintain a connection between the two worlds, we only need some independent cultivators, or people who don't have too powerful of a background, because cultivators like that are easier to manage. They're easier to subdue. They won't be like the people from the 100 Saint City who are all so arrogant because they have grand primes behind them. They've even tried to band together to stand on equal ground against our race. Humph. These people are the greatest source of instability within our race. They're the greatest cancer, so we have to eliminate them. As he said that, a seal suddenly appeared in Getty's hand. General Guan, take my army seal to the barracks and send the Deathblow army as reinforcements. The mission for you this time is to smash the remaining people of the 100 Saint City. This time, you must carry this out nice and cleanly. I don't want to hear anything about escaped people, or you generals better be ready to be punished, Getty said solemnly. When he reached the end, his tone became rather stern. There were a total of 10 armies within the Dark Star race. Every single one of them was composed of around 10,000 cultivators. The weakest were over gods. Every army was split into 10-man groups, 100-man squads and 1,000-man divisions. Early god kings could only serve as the leaders of 10-man groups. Mid-god kings served as the captains of 100-man squads, while late god kings served as commanders of 1,000-man divisions. As for the highest commander of an army, they were only peak god kings, but they were no weaker than the lord of a city. Just a single army of the Dark Star race had 1,000 god kings, who were so powerful that even some elites raised by peak clans in the Saints' world would struggle to match them. This was because there were only a handful of peak organizations that had over 1,000 god kings in the Saints' world. They might possess more primordial realm experts than the Dark Star race, but there was not a single super-organization that could outnumber the Dark Star race in terms of god kings. This was because the Saints' world was about survival of the fittest. There were battles and deaths everywhere. Even primordial realm experts would regularly die, let alone god kings. On the other hand, while the Dark Star race did experience some scuffles among the upper echelon, it was just limited to that. There would not be any deaths that would arise from internal conflict. As a result, as time went on, the Dark Star race obviously accumulated a tremendous number of god kings. The 7th Hallmaster Getty believed sending the Deathblow army to reinforce the 100 Saint City was already more than enough. However, when General Guan heard that, he became anguished. General Guan gathered his courage. He lowered his head and clasped his fist at Getty. Hallmaster, the remaining force of the 100 Saint City is unimaginably strong. They've already gathered several tens of thousand god kings to launch a furious attack against the 100 Saint City. If Vice Hallmaster Duff had not come to reinforce us in time, the 100 Saint City probably would have fallen into the hands of the outsiders already. As soon as he heard that the outsiders had gathered several tens of thousand god kings, Getty's eyes widened to a point where they were almost circular. He was filled with surprise. What did you say? The remaining force of the 100 Saint Cities gathered several tens of thousand god kings? You do know that the total number of outsider god kings in our world doesn't even come close to that sum, right? General Guan, are you sure you're not trying to deceive me? Hallmaster, this cannot be wrong. However, these god kings all seem to have been created with 100 Tribulations god king pills, because our subordinates discovered that all they had was energy. They lacked the corresponding laws, said General Guan. Getty frowned. In other words, the god kings are all sacrificial soldiers from the outside world? However, what perplexes me is that the teleportation formation at the entrance has clearly been sealed up already. So how did they get there? Did they cross through the two world mountains? Uncertainty flashed through his eyes, before turning around with a sweep of his hands and making his way back towards the teleportation formation. He said at the same time, the God King sacrificial soldiers of the outside world have all grasped combination formations. When they work together, they can even unleash the strength of a first heavenly layer infinite prime. Since so many sacrificial soldiers have appeared near 100 Saint City, Duff will probably struggle to keep them at bay with his strength at the second heavenly layer. K-Soul and Lai, accompany me to the 100 Saint City. The two Vice Hall Masters nodded and followed behind Getty towards the teleportation formation. However, just when Getty was about to enter the teleportation formation, he saw a flash and Jian Chen suddenly appeared, blocking Getty's path. Getty stopped. He looked at this old rival of his and his gaze immediately became hostile. He barked, "Kuan Tian, what are you doing? Move out of the way." Normally, Getty would never forget to belittle him as well with how Getty was as a person. However, now that there was an emergency in 100 Saint City, he did not have the time to mess around with Kuan Tian. "Getty, don't be in such a hurry to leave. There's something I want to settle with you." Jian Chen forced out a smile. Getty frowned and said rather impatiently, "What?" "I've managed to vaguely recall some matters of the past. Getty, you seem to have borrowed a large quantity of divine crystals and various heavenly resources from me in the past. Do you still remember this?" Jian Chen asked. Getty became furious with that. He barked, "What are you on about? Kuan Tian, has your mind really degraded that much? Since when did I ever borrow anything from you? Get out of the way. Stop wasting my time. You won't be able to bear the consequences if you keep this up." At this moment, Bing Yuan, Taro and Do Wujin of the Fifth Divine Hall all flew over. They stood behind Jian Chen and they were in complete doubt. "Humph. I clearly remember I lent you many resources in the past. Getty, do you plan on going back on your word?" Jian Chen did not waver at all. He stared straight at Getty, as if he would do anything to get his resources back. The three Vice Hall Masters of the Fifth Divine Hall looked out one another. They were all in absolute confusion, because in their memory, Getty had never borrowed anything from Kuan Tian at all. Moreover, with the relationship between the two Divine Halls, even if the Seventh Divine Hall really did lack anything, they would have never borrowed from the Fifth Divine Hall. "Hall Master, have you mistaken? We only remember that you lost a lot of things to Hall Master Getty through gambles, but we don't remember anything along the lines of Hall Master Getty borrowing from you," Do Wujin said. "My memory can't be wrong. Getty, just get to the point. Are you going to return the resources you borrowed from me or not? If you aren't going to, then don't even think about leaving here today." Jian Chen's attitude became firm as strands of a sixth heavenly layer infinite prime's presence radiated outwards, crushing towards Getty. Chapter 2752. A startling battle. Getty's face suddenly coldened, while his gaze sharpened in that moment as well. He knew Kuan Tian's soul had been injured in the land of soul destruction, so he did not take what Kuan Tian said at the start about him borrowing from Kuan Tian to heart. After all, something was wrong with Kuan Tian's head. He had lost his memories, so if he recalled something incorrectly, it was not like he could not be forgiven. However, Kuan Tian's threatening words at the end were extremely triggering to the Seventh Hall Master Getty. If this was just some petty small matter, Getty would never care considering he was in a hurry to go to the 100 Saint City. However, a threat from Kuan Tian was no longer a small matter. This was a major matter that had to do with the dignity of the Seventh Hall Master. "Kuan Tian, I never thought you'd become so arrogant after breaking through to the sixth heavenly layer. But fair enough, you don't remember what happened in the past anymore, so you'll obviously forget everything you've gone through as well. Looks like I need to patch up your memory a little." Getty sneered as a tremendous presence slowly rose from his body, as if he was a vicious beast that had awakened from its slumber. Disguised as Kuan Tian, Jian Chen had just been wondering how he was supposed to keep Getty busy, but now that Getty took the bait so easily, he was secretly overjoyed. As a result, he added to the situation by saying furiously, "Looks like you really don't have any plans on returning them then. If that's the case, you better forgive my rudeness." With that, Jian Chen struck first. He equipped Kuan Tian's god artifact armor and reached out in the thin air with his right hand. Immediately, a strand of sword chi appeared out from nowhere, illuminating the surroundings and directly stabbing towards Getty. The energy in the strand of sword chi was completely contained, without a shred of it leaking out. Clearly, Jian Chen had controlled it perfectly. As a result, even if the sword chi was destroyed in a clash with Getty, it would not produce energy shockwaves that were too powerful. It could not affect the surrounding environment and structures. In order to achieve this, Jian Chen could only use less than half of his strength, because that was the only way for him to ensure there would not be collateral damage. Otherwise, Probably half of the capital city would be destroyed if he struck out with his full strength, as the resulting energy would be devastating. Getty was composed. He was rather eager for this battle, because Xueqi was now at the 6th heavenly layer, not the 5th heavenly layer anymore. As an old rival of his, he obviously had to understand his strength and see just how much stronger Xueqi had become. Getty suddenly lit up with golden light. Powerful laws of metal enveloped him, which made him glisten, like he was plated in gold. Afterwards, he threw a punch. The punch glistened with golden light, like it was completely made out of gold. It was extremely tough. Moreover, there was a scorching flame hidden within the dazzling golden light. These were the laws of metal and the laws of fire. Clearly, Getty had spent a tremendous amount of time on comprehending these two laws. Even though he remained at the 6th heavenly layer in terms of comprehension, his usage of the laws, his grasp over power and the purity of his origin energy had already approached perfection. In order to avoid any shockwaves, both of them held back with their attacks. They did not even use half of their strength, so it was obviously impossible to determine who was stronger. After this quick clash, Getty pulled back and said to Jian Chen coldly, "It'll be difficult for us to move about freely here. Xueqi, if you have the courage, come with me." With that, Xueqi took off as a blur. He moved extremely quickly into the distance, disappearing into the horizon in the blink of an eye. Jian Chen could not help but smile with the success of his plan. He thought, Jin Hong's group is composed of disciples and descendants of several dozen peak organizations from the Saints' world. With their sacrificial soldiers in formation, they'll be equivalent to several dozen first heavenly layer infinite primes. That's more than enough to take back the 100 Saint City. All they need is time. As long as I keep Getty busy for 4 hours, they should be able to take back the 100 Saint City. As he thought of that, Jian Chen turned into a streak of light and shot off in Xueqi's direction. Let's go as well. We can see just how different our Hallmaster's strength is compared to Hallmaster Getty after breaking through, Do Wujin of the 5th Divine Hall said. Bing Yuan and Tara were both excited and eager as well. After nodding together, they immediately took off in pursuit. With their departure, only K-Sol and Enlai remained in front of the teleportation formation of the 7th Divine Hall, as well as General Guan who had come seeking reinforcements. General Guan was worried. The situation in the 100 Saint City was urgent. They really could not afford to wait. Now that their Hallmaster Getty was gone, General Guan had no other choice but to seek reinforcements from the 2 Vice Hallmasters, K-Sol and Enlai, in hopes that they could head to the 100 Saint City immediately. There's no hurry, General Guan. Why don't you send the Death Blow army as reinforcements for now? The battle between our Hallmaster and Hallmaster Xueqi is much more important. K-Sol, let's go as well, said Enlai. He completely ignored General Guan's request and immediately left with K-Sol. This was Xueqi's first battle with Getty after breaking through to the 6th heavenly layer, so it held great significance. Enlai and K-Sol would never want to miss something like that. As for the 100 Saint City, they never cared too much about it. To them, there was no major difference whether it was in the hands of the outsiders or the Dark Star race. It would not affect their interests at all, nor would it pose a threat to the Dark Star race. The reason why they had attacked the 100 Saint City in the first place was because Hallmaster Getty's deep hatred for the outsiders. At the same time, the 100 Saint City that was extremely distant from the capital city was in a horrible shape now. The flames of war spread everywhere. An intense battle that was enough to be described as earth-shaking to the Dark Star race unfolded. The battle had completely reached the level of the primordial realm. Battles on a level like that basically never happened within the Dark Star race. They were as rare as they came. Several thousand God King sacrificial soldiers had already rushed up the tall, lofty walls of the 100 Saint City, engaged in a brutal battle with the cultivators of the Dark Star race. Energy boomed, deafening the surroundings. Powerful shockwaves of energy turned into violent storms that wreaked havoc above the 100 Saint City, causing the walls to shake from time to time. If it were not for the fact that the city was assembled out of supreme quality saint artifacts, making it extremely tough, it would have been reduced to ruins a long time ago from the battle of tremendous scale. The people of the Dark Star race who guarded the city were forced into a constant retreat under the attacks of these sacrificial soldiers. They suffered extremely heavy casualties. This was because the forces that the Dark Star race had stationed to watch over the 100 Saint City were equivalent to one of the 10 great armies at most. They only had around 1,000 God Kings at most. However, What they faced were several dozen peak organizations from the Saints' world. Every single organization had hundreds or even thousands of sacrificial soldiers. The difference in numbers was just too great. In particular, when the sacrificial soldiers fell into formation and combined their powers, they could even erupt with the might of a first heavenly layer infinite prime. The Dark Star race was suffering a crushing defeat. Outside the city, the battle was even more intense. Vice Hall Master Duff, who had come from the 7th Divine Hall, was currently surrounded by over a dozen colossal balls of light. Every ball of light gave off a pulse of energy on par to first heavenly layer infinite primes. As a matter of fact, the energy from one of the battles had basically reached the peak of the first heavenly layer already, approaching the second heavenly layer. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Pippa Pingu. Yes, this is chapter 2753 for Chaotic Sword God. Gravity Tales is going down within 24 hours, likely forever, so if you want to keep reading CSG, you'll have to come here instead. Chapter 2753. Taking back the city. Though the powerful rings of light and energy, it was possible to make out numerous figures hidden within. These figures were not powerful, basically all early god kings. There was a huge disparity that existed between them and the primordial realm. However, they used their quantity of several hundred or even over 1,000 people to pour their strength together using a formation or some kind of secret technique, achieving a leap in quality and allowing them to stand up to experts of the primordial realm despite being just god kings. Under the encirclement of what was equivalent to over a dozen first heavenly layer infinite primes, the Vice Hall Master, Duff, of the 7th Divine Hall immediately lost the upper hand. He was reduced to a state where he could only fend off the attacks under the furious storm-like barrage. And Duff had only managed this due to how tough he was. If some first heavenly layer infinite prime from the Saints' world was in his position instead, they would never be able to last as long as he did. This was because the formation composed of these sacrificial soldiers only possessed the energy of primordial realm experts, but not the laws. However, they did come from peak organizations after all, so they could use a few powerful and ancient secret techniques, which were extraordinary in power. Suddenly, there was the clear cry of a crane, and one of the balls of light around Duff suddenly changed. The light that was as blinding as the sun actually transformed into a huge crane of several hundred meters tall in a single instant. As soon as the crane was completed, a tremendous pressure flooded the surroundings. The pressure was so great that it had completely surpassed the level of first heavenly layer infinite primes. The crane seemed like a great avatar. Although it consisted of only energy, it possessed a great will. The crane spread its blade-like wings, which turned into streaks of silver-white light, sweeping through the air with unbelievable speed towards Duff. Duff's expression changed. He felt threatened by the crane. A strike from the crane was no weaker than an attack from a peak first heavenly layer infinite prime. It even surpassed that. And most importantly, the pressure that the crane gave off could actually suppress him to a certain degree. The secret techniques that these outsiders possess are only becoming more powerful than the next. I won't be able to last much longer if this continues. Why hasn't the Hallmaster and the others arrived yet? Duff was stern. With a wave of his hand, a shield flew out. The shield was a low-quality god artifact, but it was also incomplete. The artifact spirit had vanished. It had once been heavily damaged. Boom! With that, the shield was blown away by the wing of the crane, dimming in the process. However, the strike from the crane was not spent yet. It continued towards Duff. Spurt! Blood sprayed from Duff's mouth as he was blown far away. The other organizations in the encirclement around Duff immediately used this opportunity to pursue. They did not give Duff any opportunity to catch their breath. They all mobilized their sacrificial god kings to unleash secret techniques with their full strength, launching it all at Duff. The surroundings immediately descended into chaos as storms of energy wreaked havoc. Even the 100 Saints city that was several dozen kilometers away from this battlefield was affected. As a result, when the storms of energy arrived, the towering walls of the city trembled slightly. The cultivators battling on the walls or in skies fell like leaves, scattered away by the storm. From several dozen kilometers away, the god kings were unaffected, but a few overgods and cultivators below overgods suffered rather heavy casualties. A clearing appeared around the walls of the city, but soon afterwards, even more sacrificial soldiers filled the gap. They scaled the walls and directly killed their way into the city. The defensive forces of the Dark Star race were suffering a crushing defeat. On the other side, after being injured by the crane, Duff was no longer as powerful as when he was in his peak condition. His battle prowess plummeted. Faced with the vicious pursuit and attacks of over a dozen peak organizations, he finally began to show signs of weakness. God damn it! What is General Guan doing? Why haven't the reinforcements arrived yet? If the outsiders retake the 100 Saint City, that'll be a vicious slap across the face of our 7th Divine Hall. Duff was extremely irritated inside. Now, the outsiders had already made their way into the 100 Saint City, and the pressure they faced plummeted. As a result, a few prodigies from a few peak clans were immediately freed up, rushing over to provide reinforcements with the sacrificial soldiers under their command. They fell into formation as quickly as they could as they charged at Duff aggressively. Seeing that, Duff's expression changed. He gritted his teeth and made up his mind, fleeing in complete reluctance. Don't chase him. Let's return to the 100 Saint City immediately and activate the defensive formations. The Dark Star race won't just let the matter end like this. They will definitely send even more powerful primordial realm experts to deal with us. Only by gaining control over the 100 Saint City will we have a path of retreat. With Duff's flight, the dozen or so primordial realm formations came to a halt as well. Jin Hong's voice rang out from them, before flying towards the 100 Saint City. The other prodigies said nothing. Although they had successfully repelled Duff and taken back the 100 Saint City, they did not seem happy at all. Instead, they were all solemn. Soon afterwards, they all returned to the 100 Saint City as well. Very soon, the battle came to an end. Jin Hong and the others had reclaimed the city, and the people from the various organizations who had been locked up earlier were all released as well. Quick! Place these divine crystals into their given positions. We need to activate the defensive formations immediately. Many leaders of the various organizations took out large quantities of divine crystals in the 100 Saint City and handed them to their sacrificial soldiers, giving them a set of orders. I never thought we'd take back the city so easily. Fortunately, they couldn't activate the formations of the city. The 100 Saint City was built by us after all. The only thing it's linked to is our bloodline. Coupled with the fact that the formations can only be activated with accompanying secret techniques, the 100 Saint City is just an ordinary city even if the Dark Star race take it. How are they supposed to activate its true might? Let's just activate the formations quickly. As long as the formations have been completely activated, we'll be able to last a while even if the 7th Hallmaster comes in person. It'll give us enough time to retreat. With that, everyone finally eased up. They all understood their limitations. They understood that the formations created from their sacrificial god kings gave them a force equivalent to several dozen primordial realm experts, but these would all just be first heavenly layer infinite primes, while there were many more powerful primordial realm experts out there in the Dark Star world. Even the 7th Hallmaster was a 6th layer primordial realm expert. Just he alone could annihilate all their sacrificial soldiers with a sweep of his hand. As a result, they needed to use the power of the city to contend against the stronger primordial realm experts of the Dark Star race. Young Master, there's bad news. Over 100 crucial points to activating the formations have been sealed up with formations from the Dark Star race. We can't get through them without strength at the primordial realm, a sacrificial soldier reported at this moment. When the prodigies all heard this, their faces all changed slightly. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2754. Evenly matched. The formations of the 100 Saint City differed from regular formations, due to the extreme restrictions that existed with what could be brought into the Dark Star world. Saint artifacts could be at the supreme quality at most. The various heavily resources, materials and resources suffered from the same restriction as well. As a result, they obviously had to come up with extraordinary methods to build a colossal formation that could block the attacks of the primordial realm under these restrictions. This also led to the creation of a formation consisting of various supreme quality saint artifacts and countless smaller formations under the assistance of the formation grandmasters and grandmaster artifact smiths who stood at the apex of the saints' world. However, it would be much more complicated to completely activate compared to the formations in the outside world. These so-called crucial points of the formation were more like keys to the activating the formation than anything else. The formations had to be activated using these keys with their corresponding techniques. Now that the keys had been sealed off by the experts of the Dark Star race, it was obviously impossible to activate the formation that protected the city. As a result, the leaders of the various organizations who had just eased up began to worry again after receiving the news. They might have brought many sacrificial soldiers with them who would be equivalent to several dozen primordial realm experts if they fell into formation. But these primordial realm experts only possessed the energy, not the laws, of the primordial realm. They still differed from actual primordial realm experts at the end of the day. A force like this was enough to deal with any first or second heavenly layer experts they ran into using their advantage in numbers. However, if they encountered stronger primordial realm experts of the Dark Star race, they would just crumble in defeat. As a result, the 100 Saint City was what they relied on the most against the Dark Star race. It was also their final path of retreat. The teleportation formation connected to the entrance in the Two World Mountains has been sealed up by the Dark Star race as well. Another piece of news arrived, which made everyone's heart sink even further. However, they responded extremely quickly. The several dozen organizations immediately separated, charging towards several dozen crucial points with their sacrificial god kings. They ordered the god kings to fall into formation, unleashing the might of the primordial realm to attack the formations cast down by the Dark Star race. Immediately, booms roared through the 100 Saint City as the strength of several dozen primordial realm experts erupted inside, forming a devastating energy storm that shook up the entire city. The ground trembled. However, the city was extremely sturdy, so it endured the barrage of energy. The countless saint artifacts that the city was composed of all did light up resplendently, however. Under a profound formation, these saint artifacts connected with one another, forming one flawless body and linking their energies together, spreading the damage across the entire structure. Quick, everyone unleash your full strength. At a time like this, we can't afford to hold back anymore. We have to open up the formations in the 100 Saint City before the stronger primordial realm experts of the Dark Star race arrive. Quite a few prodigies would call out anxiously as they attacked the formations. They would strike out with their full strength as they urged everyone else on. This was because they all understood that only a fine line existed between life and death for them under the current circumstances. Whether they could survive completely depended on whether they could activate the formations in time. However, the sealing formations laid down by the Dark Star race were not weak either. Even with the strength of the primordial realm from the formations of their sacrificial soldiers, they still struggled to destroy these formations. Only after an entire 30 minutes did a formation finally collapse on itself from running out of energy under their constant barrage of attacks, exposing the crucial point sealed up in there. However, just a single crucial point was nowhere near enough. If they wanted to activate the formation completely, they needed to use all the crucial points together. That was a total of 99 crucial points. There were also people attacking the sealing formation around the teleportation formation. A total of 4 organizations gathered there, giving off the aura of 4 primordial realm experts as they blasted the sealing formation. However, the sealing formation was clearly much stronger there. Even under what was equivalent to the attacks of 4 primordial realm experts, it remained intact for such a long time. Time passed quietly under everyone's nervousness. Very soon, an hour had passed and less than 10 of the 99 crucial points had been exposed. However, a piece of good news arrived very soon. The sealing formation around the teleportation formation had been destroyed. Check the teleportation formation immediately, and then activate it. Make sure the teleportation formation is available for use at all times. Quick, send people over to check. If we can't activate the main formation in the 100 Saint City before stronger primordial realm experts of the Dark Star race arrive, leave through the teleportation formation immediately. Orders were issued one after another and the people around the teleportation formation immediately got to work. But very soon, the people checking on the teleportation formation cried out, "God damn it! Those bastards of the Dark Star race. They've actually dismantled an important component of the teleportation formation. Putting it back together will take a month at the very least." When the prodigies heard that, their hearts all sank as their faces twisted. The teleportation formation was their only path of retreat. Now that it was out of service, it meant that they could no longer leave here. Only a single path lies ahead of us, which is gaining complete control over the 100 Saint City. That's the only way for us to last in this world, Jin Hong's voice rang out. The teleportation formation requires a month before it can be used. Even if we activate the main formations of the city, it can't last a month against the attacks of stronger primordial realm experts, Bai Zhanxiong of the 100 Battles clan bellowed. He originally believed they would be able to maneuver about freely after taking back the 100 Saint City, but he never thought the Dark Star race would be even craftier than he imagined them to be, where they had actually done so much to the 100 Saint City that it endangered them. Now's not the time to discuss that. Let's focus all of our efforts into destroying the formations. I hope we can make it. None of them knew the reason why the stronger primordial realm experts of the Dark Star race had yet to arrive was because someone had held them up elsewhere. Otherwise, they would have never had the opportunity to charge into the 100 Saint City. They would have been stopped by the arriving primordial realm experts probably before they could even set foot in the city. At the same time, a battle that could also be described as unprecedented among the Dark Star race unfolded in a wasteland several million kilometers from the capital city. Disguised as Kuan Tian, Jian Chen fought the 7th Hall Master Getty with great intensity. Energy swept through the surroundings as sharp strands of sword qi and glistening laws of metal collided again and again in the surroundings. There were even traces of scorching hot laws of fire among it all. Every time they clashed, every time their energy collided, it was like a clap of thunder, producing a deafening boom. The energy left behind several dozen craters in the ground below, basically riddling the area with holes. Getty, looks like this is all there is to your strength. I might not have been your opponent in the past, but I'm no weaker than you now. Jian Chen laughed aloud. The sword in his hand shone with dazzling light, and with a swing, the surroundings immediately lit up. The entire space there became filled with tiny strands of sword qi which swept towards Kuan Tian. Getty's expression twisted. He actually possessed the upper hand as he clashed with Jian Chen, but he did not seem happy at all. This was because before Kuan Tian had broken through, he was not his opponent at all. He could beat up Kuan Tian with great ease, but now, he discovered that the Kuan Tian who had just broken through had become much stronger than he imagined him to be. Kuan Tian had only reached the 6th heavenly layer a few days ago, yet he was able to match him, someone who had spent several million years at the 6th heavenly layer, evenly. Kuan Tian's sword qi is actually even sharper than before, and his usage of the laws of the sword has improved as well. Breaking through and losing his memory this time has actually come with tremendous benefits. What kind of luck is that? Getty resented secretly. His face had darkened. Although he had complete confidence in being able to defeat Kuan Tian if he used his full strength, Kuan Tian had only just reached the 6th heavenly layer recently, so there was a lot of room for growth for him. He could defeat Kuan Tian now, but what about the future? Our Hallmaster has actually become so powerful, but the way the Hallmaster fights seems to be slightly different from before. Have you discovered that ever since our Hallmaster reached the 6th heavenly layer, his battle prowess has clearly increased qualitatively? Ha ha ha, don't forget that our Hallmasters remained in the land of soul destruction for 3 whole years. He must have had a fortuitous encounter during those 3 years, or he might have learned some battle tactics from the lingering consciousness of the planetary beast. Bing Yuan, Taro and Do Wujin, who watched on from afar, were all overjoyed. Their 5th Divine Hall had always been on bad terms with the 7th Divine Hall, and they had received quite a lot of abuse from them before. With their lackluster strength, there were even times when they just had to accept it silently. The inability and frustration they experienced was maddening. Now, their patience had finally bore fruit. After reaching the 6th heavenly layer, their Hallmaster was no weaker than an expert who had reached the 6th heavenly layer several million years ago. He was able to stand up to Getty. They no longer had to suffer the abuse from the 7th Divine Hall anymore. Bing Yuan, Taro and Do Wujin all felt elated. They were extremely excited and utterly overjoyed. To the other side, the expressions of the 2 Vice Hall Masters of the 7th Divine Hall, K-Sol and Enlai, was not any better than Getty's. Both of them hovered in the distance quietly. They formed quite the contrast with the 3 overjoyed Vice Hall Masters on the other side. Humph, I have to defeat Kuan Tian no matter what this time. The senses of Kuan Tian's soul swept out, and he noticed the expressions of the Vice Hall Masters from both Divine Halls. His eyes immediately coldened. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2755. The Bell of Suppression. Getty formed a seal with both hands and began to use a secret technique. A golden fire suddenly rose up from him. It gave off terrifying heat under its dazzling golden light. This was a combination of the laws of metal and the laws of fire. Even though the 2 laws remained separate, Getty's usage of them was extremely skillful, such that it seemed like the 2 laws had fused together. With his movements, the ways of the world began to descend. The laws of metal and laws of fire conjured around Xueqi. Bell of suppression, suppress! Xueqi bellowed out. With that, his energy immediately surged, flowing out like a tidal wave. It combined with the laws of metal and laws of fire around him perfectly, forming a huge golden bell of several dozen meters tall in a single instance and flying towards Jian Chen. The golden bell descended from above Jian Chen's head. As if it was connected to the surroundings, it suppressed Jian Chen with the great might of the world. Jian Chen's body sank. Below the golden bell, he immediately felt like his body weighed as much as a mountain. A mysterious force appeared from the golden bell as well, restricting his surroundings. The Bell of Suppression. That's a god-tier battle skill that the Hallmaster created after several million years. It's one of his greatest techniques. I never thought our Hallmaster would actually use this move against Xueqi. Afar, Vice Hallmaster Enlai's eyes lit up as he could not help but say. Standing beside him, K-Soul became eager as well, showing signs of excitement. He said, out of the many times Xueqi has battled with our Hallmaster, there were 2 times when Xueqi became trapped by our Hallmaster's Bell of Suppression, unable to break free. For both times, he would remain trapped in there for several days and be utterly humiliated. Who knows how long our Hallmaster can keep Xueqi trapped this time? Xueqi's reached the 6th heavenly layer now after all, so he's completely different from before. It's obviously impossible for the Bell of Suppression to keep him trapped for as long as before, said Enlai. His lips curled into a faint smile, as if victory was already determined. Oh no! Hallmaster Xueqi's actually using the Bell of Suppression again. To the other side, the expressions of the 3 Vice Hallmasters changed. They all became stern as their gazes focused on Jian Chen, watching on closely with some worry. Jian Chen stared at the Bell of Suppression as it descended from above. His eyes shone slightly. He secretly used a sliver of his ultimate will and discovered that he could once again sense the obscure connection between the world and the Bell of Suppression. If he wanted to, he could use the power of the ultimate will to sever this connection at any time, such that an extraordinary god-tier battle skill like the Bell of Suppression would be reduced to an ordinary attack in a single instance. However, he did not do that. Instead, he put on an act like he was powerless against it, allowing the bell to fall on him. Boom! With that, the Bell of Suppression slammed against the ground heavily like it was crushing the entire area. It seemed to have become a prison, trapping Jian Chen in there. Bang! 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 Before long, a series of muffled sounds rang out from the bell, shaking up the surroundings. The terrifying sound wave spread through the surroundings, causing the ground to shatter and become riddled with thick cracks. This was from Jian Chen's attacks landing on the Bell of Suppression. Every single attack would make the Bell of Suppression shake slightly. Every single attack would make the golden light disperse slightly. Enlai, who had originally been grinning slightly, immediately became stern with this sight. He frowned. After reaching the 6th heavenly layer, Xueqi's strength has increased by far too much. It seems like the Hallmaster's Bell of Suppression can only keep Xueqi trapped for a few hours. K-Soul was rather distracted as he muttered, "This is impossible. Xueqi's clearly just broken through. He probably hasn't even consolidated his cultivation completely. There's still huge room for improvement in the future for him. If he's already so powerful now, wouldn't that mean that our Hallmaster will be helpless against him once he reaches the peak of this realm? Sigh, looks like Xueqi's really benefited from the land of soul destruction." Enlai sighed gently. To another side, Xueqi's expression did not ease up at all. Instead, he became sterner. He stared at the trembling, booming Bell of Suppression and thought, the Bell of Suppression could keep him trapped for a couple of days in the past, but now, looking at how quickly the energy is being depleted, the bell can probably only keep him trapped for around a minute at most. Xueqi, just what fortuitous encounter did you go through in the land of soul destruction such that your battle prowess has increased so much? Xueqi's gaze was rather chilling. He formed a seal with both hands again, and immediately slammed strands of laws of fire into the Bell of Suppression. Immediately, scorching flames rose up from the dazzling bell. In that instant, the Bell of Suppression seemed to become a huge cauldron, refining the trapped Jian Chen. Oh no, our Hallmaster's in trouble. In the past, he only just trapped the Hallmaster, but now he's actually refining the Hallmaster with the laws of fire. Our Hallmaster probably won't be able to last very long like that. What is Xueqi trying to do? Is he trying to kill him? Bing Yuan, Do Wujin and Taro struggled to remain composed. They all became rather frantic. But suddenly, there was an explosion. Getty's bell of suppression blew up loudly, while the sealed area became filled with sword chi. The silvery white sword chi seemed like a pillar reaching towards the heavens, stabbing straight into the sky and illuminating the surroundings. Jian Chen's figure flickered within the center of the pillar of sword chi. He seemed to have transformed into the sword chi that pierced through everything, forcing his way out of Getty's bell of suppression. However, it took him tremendous amounts of effort to do that. After smashing through the bell of suppression, his sword chi immediately died down, revealing his figure. However, his complexion was rather pale and he seemed rather frail. Kuan Tian, you've proved that you're worthy of my attention. However, that's all it is. You're still not my opponent. Getty stared at the pale-faced Jian Chen and did not continue attacking him. Jian Chen did not continue either. Instead, he said sternly, "You really are an experienced 6th heavenly layer expert. Just breaking out of your bell of suppression took up 40% of my strength. I'm not your opponent right now, but I'm not just going to let the matter of borrowing a great deal of resources from me slide." With that, Jian Chen waved his hand at the 3 vice hallmasters and left. "You bastard! I've already said that I've never borrowed anything from you." Getty became rather irritated from that. There was something wrong with Kuan Tian's head. He just kept insisting he had borrowed from him. It made Getty feel like he could never clear his name. Bing Yuan, Taro and Do Wujin obviously understood that Getty probably was not in the wrong here as they listened to his curses. They all smiled bitterly instead. However, Jian Chen, who flew at the very front, was unfazed. He thought to himself, 8 hours have passed already. Jin Hong and the others should have reclaimed the 100 Saint City already. However, I need to pay a personal visit to the 100 Saint City. Although the 7th Divine Hall is in charge for this millennium, something unpredictable might happen. You can never know what can happen. Jian Chen was worried about the situation of the 100 Saint City, which was why he was afraid to spend too much time fighting against Getty. After all, as they were all outsiders, Jian Chen would obviously help out the people in the 100 Saint City as long as it was within his ability. Through this battle, he had basically gained a grasp over Getty's actual battle prowess as well. His strength was extraordinary. If it really did come to a battle of life or death, he would struggle to kill Getty in a short amount of time. Unless I use the profound sword chi or the shadowless life-taking strike, killing him will take quite the effort, thought Jian Chen. Although Getty was at the 6th heavenly layer, he was no weaker than 7th heavenly layer infinite primes of the saints' world. Without the 9-star sword of heavenly ways, killing a 7th heavenly layer infinite prime would not be an easy feat. Although he had obtained a god artifact armor and a god artifact sword from Kuan Tian, incomplete god artifacts without artifact spirits could never be compared to complete god artifacts. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2756. The Major Backer of the 100 Saint City, 1. 4 figures traveled through the sky swiftly like shooting stars towards the capital city of the Dark Star race. Jian Chen flew at the very front. He had his arms behind his back as he remained relaxed. Only his eyes would twinkle from time to time, thinking about something. Behind him, Bing Yuan, Taro and Do Wujin smiled ear to ear. They seemed to be in an extremely great mood. Although their hallmaster had lost the battle, they could see how their hallmaster already possessed the strength to stand up to Getty. It was no longer like before, where he was completely helpless against him and would only be overwhelmed. Moreover, they believed that in the future, their hallmaster's battle prowess would definitely exceed the 7th hallmaster's. By then, they would be able to strike back fearlessly against the vice hallmasters of the 7th Divine Hall as well. Back at the battlefield, the 7th hallmaster and the 2 vice hallmasters remained where they were. Getty stared deeply in the direction which Jian Chen had left in and said sternly after quite a while, "I never thought Kuan Tian would become so powerful as soon as he broke through. Once he reaches the peak of the 6th heavenly layer in the future, I probably won't be his opponent anymore." Hallmaster, there's no need to belittle yourself. Haven't you won this battle? And, you haven't used your other powerful battle skills either. You've only used a fraction of your strength against Kuan Tian, so even if Kuan Tian really does reach the peak of the 6th heavenly layer, he'll be equal to you at most, K-Sol said. He had to admit that Kuan Tian was very powerful, but he refused to believe he would surpass Getty. This was because Kuan Tian had only comprehended a single law, the laws of the sword. Even though it was one of the laws with the greatest offensive power, it still paled in comparison to Getty's two laws. If one of Getty's laws was used alone against the laws of the sword, it would obviously lose out, but if the two laws were used simultaneously, it would be a completely different story. Moreover, Getty's usage of the two laws had already neared perfection. They had basically reached the stage where they fused together. Even though they were not actually fused, their power was no weaker than the laws of the sword. Getty shook his head gently. It's different. You can't treat Kuan Tian's breakthrough this time like all the times before, because he broke through in the land of soul destruction. The land of soul destruction is filled with the lingering consciousness and indestructible will of the planetary beast. Although the lingering consciousness poses great risk to all cultivators who set foot in there, they offer great fortune as well. Kuan Tian's become so powerful just from breaking through, and his laws of the sword has clearly grown stronger. It's as clear as day that he's had a fortuitous encounter in there. And while he did lose this battle, I feel like he was also holding back. As a result, it's possible that he'll exceed me when he reaches the peak of the 6th heavenly layer. K-Sol and Enlai said nothing more. It was possible to tell from how stern they were that they felt extremely glum inside. Let's go back. We should check out the situation with the 100 Saint City as well, said Getty. He quickly settled down and regained his calmness. He flew back to the capital city with K-Sol and Enlai. Jian Chen's group of 4 and Getty's group of 3 returned to their corresponding divine halls in the capital city at roughly the same time. General Guan, who had come to the 7th divine hall seeking reinforcements, was no longer present. The area around the teleportation formation was empty. Getty landed on the spacious square before the 7th divine hall with the 2 hall masters and directly made his way over to the teleportation formation. Afterwards, they vanished with a flash. Jian Chen and the others from the neighboring 5th divine hall disregarded all of that. Jian Chen watched Getty and the 2 vice hall masters leave through the teleportation formation. After a moment of consideration, he asked slowly, "The fruit of nurturing ways requires a large amount of divine crystals to evolve, but all of these divine crystals come from the outsiders. Are there a lot of outsiders gathered in the 100 Saint City?" "Hall Master, that would be the 100 Saint City of the past. The 100 Saint City has already been claimed by our race under the orders of the 7th Hall Master," said Vice Hall Master Bing Yuan. Do Wujin chuckled with that. That's become a matter of the past as well. Just earlier, General Guan, who had been stationed at the 100 Saint City, came back seeking reinforcements, saying that the outsiders were trying to take back the city. They won't be able to hold the 100 Saint City for much longer. I think Hall Master Getty's left through the teleportation formation to go to the 100 Saint City. Do Wujin was a 4th heavenly layer infinite prime, so he was much stronger than Bing Yuan. As a result, he heard exactly what General Guan had said earlier. However, Do Wujin did not really care about the 100 Saint City. In his eyes, the existence or ownership of the 100 Saint City was insignificant. If Jian Chen had not asked about it, he probably would have forgotten about this already. "Hallmaster, there's no need to worry about the source of the divine crystals for now, because in the past few years, the 10 divine halls have all recruited some outsiders to deal with this matter. Although the organizations behind these people are nowhere as powerful as those behind the people of the 100 Saint City, this won't be a problem if it's just obtaining divine crystals," continued Do Wujin. "All right. Though it's not just for the sake of divine crystal, but for heavenly resources that can heal the soul as well. I'll probably need these heavenly resources to recover my memories. Since the cultivators of the 100 Saint City have such powerful backings, they might possess heavenly resources like that. Let's go and check out the 100 Saint City as well," said Jian Chen. He would definitely be standing on the side of the 100 Saint City if he went, and perhaps he would even need to interfere and stop Getty when the need arose. As a result, he needed to have a valid reason for going there, a reason that would not raise any suspicion at all. Only then would it seem normal. Otherwise, if he, an amnesiac, someone who should have forgotten everything, suddenly wanted to help the 100 Saint City, anyone would be able to see through his act. "Yes, Hall Master." Bing Yuan, Taro and Do Wujin all answered. If their Hall Master had directly stated that he wanted to go to the 100 Saint City, the 3 of them would definitely find it extremely strange, because their Hall Master had never cared about the 100 Saint City in the past. Even when the 5th Divine Hall was in control, he had never asked about the 100 Saint City, because it was not something worth his attention. However, they came to an understanding after hearing what their hallmaster said at the end. It was true. His soul was injured, and if he wanted pills or heavenly resources that could heal the soul, he could only rely on these outsiders. And they understood that even in the outside world, heavenly resources and pills that could heal souls were extremely precious. They were not items that any random organization could produce. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 2757. The major backer of the 100 Saint City. 2. Booms rang through the 100 Saint City endlessly as powerful storms of energy swept through the entire place. The prodigies from the several dozen peak organizations of the Saints' world currently stood in formation with their sacrificial god kings, unleashing the powerful strength of First Heavenly Layer Infinite Primes as they attacked the formations left behind by the primordial realm experts of the Dark Star race with everything they had. They were aware that time was tight. The primordial realm experts of the Dark Star race could arrive at any moment, which was why they unleashed their full strength, disregarding how much energy they used up, to barrage the formations constantly. The number of sacrificial god kings under the command of each organization differed. Some had as many as over 1,000 people, while some had as few as 600 or 700. As a result, the organizations with fewer sacrificial god kings gradually showed signs of weakness due to their depleted energy before they could even get through a single formation. They were unable to absorb the origin energy in the surroundings as they were in the Dark Star world. Once their energy was depleted, they could only recover it through absorbing the energy in divine crystals. Many of them had exhausted themselves when they took back the 100 Saint City earlier, so they obviously felt like they were overexerting themselves now that they had to destroy these formations as well. Of course, the primary reason for all this was because they were not actually at the primordial realm. Although the formations could gather their energy and unleash the might of the primordial realm, they still paled in comparison to actual primordial realm experts. We're through. We're through with the formation over here. We can activate the crucial point now. Suddenly, an excited cheer rang out. Jin Hong's group had finally destroyed the formation around a crucial point after several attacks. Of course, they had not actually destroyed it. Instead, they had depleted the energy in the formation, such that it collapsed on itself. Jin Hong exhaled deeply. As he looked at the crucial point exposed before him, he seemed to see the hope of victory. One crucial point's nowhere near enough. We need all of them to completely activate the formations of the city. Ping Yixing of the Empire Lotus Sword sect bellowed out from another side. He stood in a great formation with almost 1,000 of the sacrificial god kings from his Empire Lotus Sword sect, conjuring a strand of dazzling, surging sword chi. The energy in his targeted formation rapidly being depleted as well. Clearly, it was close to collapsing. Leave behind 2 people to fill the crucial point with divine crystals. The rest, come with me. Jin Hong did not rest. After a series of orders, he immediately ventured to the next crucial point with his sacrificial god kings. There were a total of 99 crucial points to activating the formations of the 100 Saint City, but there were only around 60 organizations that could create primordial realm formations. Even when a single organization handled a single point, over 30 crucial points would still remain untouched. Very soon, Jin Hong managed to get through to a second crucial point. Many more crucial points followed. The stronger organizations in the group had all exposed a crucial point now. Without any exception, no one stopped to rest. After getting through to their first crucial point, they would eat some pills to recover their energy before continuing to the next crucial point. Time passed gradually as everyone made use of every second. Very soon, several hours had passed. During these few hours, everyone had overexerted their origin energy, including Jin Hong. They had no time to absorb energy from divine crystals. They all used the pills they had brought in from the saints' world. They chowed down the various types of supreme-grade pills like candy. After several hours of full-powered attacks, most of the 99 crucial points were now exposed. Only around 30 remained. However, the fewer crucial points that remained, the slower they became at getting through to them. Gradually, it had gone from a single organization per crucial point to 2 organizations. There were even some crucial points with 3 organizations around them. At the same time, there were a large number of city guards were stationed around the teleportation formation in the center of the Dark Knight City, the city closest to the 100 Saint City. This teleportation formation that connected the cities in the Dark Star world was now under control, forbidding anyone from setting foot in there. Suddenly, the teleportation formation lit up and 3 figures appeared. Unsurprisingly, they were the 7th Hall Master Getty and his 2 Vice Hall Masters, Enlai and K-Soul. Out of the 3 of them, Getty was a 6th Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime. After him was Enlai at the 4th Heavenly Layer, and then finally K-Soul at the 3rd Heavenly Layer. With their emergence from the formation, the heavy pressure of the primordial realm engulfed the entire city in a single instant. Greetings, Hall Master. Greetings, Vice Hall Masters. The city guards stationed around the teleportation formation all knelt down to greet them. They showed great respect. Most of them even displayed admiration and faith in their eyes. The primordial realm was a supreme level of cultivation within the Dark Star race. It was a supreme realm that obstructed far, far too many God Kings of the Dark Star race. It was also a gate of legends that all God Kings of the Dark Star race strived for, but were not able to cross through. Throughout the history of the Dark Star race, across all those years, they had only managed to gather a handful of primordial realm experts. It was possible to say that each primordial realm expert represented utmost glory and endless authority. The 7th Hall Master Getty stepped out with a cold expression. He looked past the city guards in the surroundings who were no stronger than God Kings in an indifferent manner. He seemed like he reigned above and could step over their lives if he wished to. He said nothing, as if communicating with these city guards of lowly status would lower his social status. As a result, as soon as he emerged from the teleportation, he took off into the air. His target was obviously the 100 Saint City. Enlai and K-Soul followed closely behind. Do you see him? That's the 7th Hall Master. He's the person who's responsible for all the matters of our race this millennium. I never thought the 7th Hall Master would actually come to our Dark Knight City. He's an extremely powerful primordial realm expert. It's said that the 7th Hall Master is almost unrivaled in strength. He's already reached the peak of Infinite Prime, one of the absolute figures only second to the Emperor. Never did I think I would actually see legendary primordial realm experts one day. The entire city immediately fell into an uproar after Getty had left. Everyone was in high spirits as they discussed the 7th Hall Master with great intensity. However, the teleportation formation suddenly flashed again and a few more figures appeared. The difference this time was that before the white light had even receded, one of the figures had already shot off. He moved extremely quickly, so fast that no one saw him clearly. These people who had appeared afterwards stunned all of the city guards in the surroundings, because they had only heard the 7th Hall Master would be visiting the Dark Knight City. They had closed off all teleportations leading to the Dark Knight City from other cities as a result. So what was the deal with this second group of people? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 2758. The Major Backer of the 100 Saint City 3. The guards around the teleportations all looked at the 3 figures in the teleportation formation with doubt and curiosity, but very soon, one of the guards who seemed like the leader there suddenly changed in expression, because he managed to recognize one of them. He was a Vice Hall Master of the 5th Divine Hall from the 10 Great Divine Halls, Bing Yuan. Recognizing him, the leader immediately shuddered. He bowed in utmost respect and called out, "Greetings from the Vice Commander of the City Guards of the Dark Knight City, Lu Fei, Vice Hall Master." His voice was very loud, as if he was reminding the soldiers in the surroundings. Just as expected, the other guards around the teleportation formation all changed in expression from what Vice Commander Lu Fei said. Without any more hesitation, they all bowed like Lu Fei, but their hearts were churning. A Vice Hall Master of the 10 Divine Halls. A person without a certain level of status or identity would not even be able to meet a figure of such lofty status in their entire lives. They wondered just what was going on today. First, the 7th Hall Master had come to the Dark Knight City, and now, a Vice Hall Master of the 5th Divine Hall had come as well. In just one short day, so many important figures had come to the Dark Knight City. This rarely ever happened throughout the history of the 36 major cities of the Dark Star race. "May I ask if there is any way this lowly one can serve you, Vice Hall Master?" Lu Fei asked carefully. He glanced past the 2 other people who stood beside Bing Yuan in respect and doubt. He was rather troubled as he was uncertain who they were. This was because he only knew Bing Yuan out of the 3 Vice Hall Masters of the 5th Divine Hall. When the 5th Divine Hall was in charge, only the weakest out of the 3 Vice Hall Masters, Bing Yuan, would travel everywhere running errands, which was why a few more leaders and commanders recognized Bing Yuan. "I don't need you right now. Just do your assigned job," Bing Yuan said nonchalantly, before taking off with Taro and Do Wujin. "Vice Commander, who are the two beside the Vice Hallmaster? They seem like they have quite some status." Some soldiers asked quietly after the three of them had departed. The Vice Commander's gaze remained fixed on the three figures in the distance as he said sternly, "I've never seen them before, but seeing how they stand with their heads held high beside the Vice Hallmaster, and how they all seem to be on equal footing, I'd say they should be Vice Hallmasters of the Fifth Divine Hall as well." "What? They're all Vice Hallmasters of the Fifth Divine Hall? The Fifth Divine Hall only has 3 Vice Hallmasters, so that's all of them? Oh right, there was someone else who left as soon as he had arrived. Who's he?" A soldier said in surprise. The Vice Commander was shocked. He seemed to have guessed the identity of the person who had taken off first. His heart began to shake. The number of crucial points still sealed in the 100 Saint City decreased, while the rate at which they were being exposed increased as well. There were 20 left, then 10, then 5. Finally, after half an hour, all of the formations in the 100 Saint City left by the Dark Star race had been destroyed. The various organizations had now all regained control over the crucial points for activating the formations of the 100 Saint City. They did not pause at all. After regaining control over all the crucial points, the people from these organizations immediately filled them up with divine crystals. These divine crystals were no longer thumb-sized, but 1-meter cubes. Every block of supreme-grade divine crystal was a 1-meter cube. Just one of them was equivalent to 1,000,000 supreme-grade divine crystals. Every single crucial point, all 99 of them, were filled with several hundred blocks of supreme-grade divine crystals. If they were converted to the normal standard, then each crucial point contained several 100 million divine crystals. It was an astronomical sum in total. However, behind the 100 Saint City were several dozen peak organizations of the Saints' world. As a result, while the number of divine crystals that went into activating the formation seemed terrifying, it was basically like a tiny droplet in the ocean in the eyes of these peak organizations. As a matter of fact, it did not even match a tiny droplet in the ocean for some of them. "We've filled the crucial points with sufficient divine crystals, so use your bloodlines and activate the formations." A prodigy called out in a victorious joy. Once the formations of the 100 Saint City were completely activated, they would be safe. There would basically be no threat to their lives anymore. The formations of the 100 Saint City were enough to stop the stronger infinite primes of the Dark Star race temporarily. And with the time the formations could provide, they could repair the teleportation formation in the city, allowing them to leave if they wished. They now stood firmly in the 100 Saint City. The several dozen prodigies hovered in the air. Energy surged from them as they formed seals with both hands, using secret techniques to activate the defensive formations of the 100 Saint City. At the same time, droplets of essence blood flew out from them. Each droplet divided into 99 portions and landed on the 99 crucial points. The strongest defensive formations of the 100 Saint City could not be activated by any person. Aside from requiring the corresponding secret techniques, they required a droplet of essence blood from a bloodline they recognized as well. The formations could not be activated if even a single component was missing. As they used their secret techniques, the 99 crucial points located throughout the entire city immediately erupted with blinding light. The crucial points had been activated now. The tremendous amounts of divine crystals placed in them vanished at an unbelievable rate, turning into pure vast energy which was absorbed by the crucial points. The 99 crucial points were like a key for opening the defensive formations of the 100 Saint City. The activation of these crucial points was equivalent to turning this key, as if it was undoing a seal somewhere hidden in the city. Immediately, the entire city trembled. A colossal sea of energy deep below the city seemed like it had suddenly been freed from ice, turning into raging rivers which permeated the entire place instantly. The entire city immediately lit up, emanating with extremely powerful pulses of energy. At the same time, layers upon layers of transparent barriers began to form over the city, draping down and enveloping the entire place. There were many layers of barriers. In just a short instance, over a dozen had appeared, and that was not all. As time went on, even more barriers formed one after another. In just a few seconds, over 50 barriers had been created. The prodigies standing in the 100 Saint City all could not help but smile as they watched the barriers rapidly appear in the air. Now, their tense minds had finally eased up. "How bold of you! You've killed so many of my clansmen. You cannot be forgiven. At this moment, a cold snort suddenly rang out. The voice was frigid and filled with killing intent and tremendous fury. Just the powerful sound wave had managed to shake up the rapidly forming barriers, as if they were struck by a powerful attack. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2759, The Major Backer of the 100 Saint City, 4. Oh no, a primordial realm expert of the Dark Star race has arrived. They're at the 5th heavenly layer at the very least, or even stronger than that. The prodigies in the 100 Saint City all changed drastically in expression. The voice made their hearts that had just relaxed tighten up once more. The defensive formations of the 100 Saint City were just too complicated, so they required some time to activate. Now that the process was still incomplete, it was incapable of stopping stronger primordial realm experts. Afar, the 7th Hall Master Getty's face was sunken. He was furious as he radiated with heavy killing intent. He had already pulled ahead of Enlai and Kaisol, rushing towards the 100 Saint City as quickly as he could. The senses of his soul had already engulfed the 100 Saint City. He could see everything inside. Those pools and streams of blood and those corpses of his clansmen strewn on the ground had completely set off Getty's killing intent. Although he had learned about the battle near the 100 Saint City from General Guan, he had not been too worried, because he believed that even if the army stationed here could not fend off the outsiders, they would be able to last for a while with Vice Hall Master Duff's support. As a result, Getty had been in no hurry as he made his way over. However, never did he think that he would see a ground littered with corpses of his own clansmen when he arrived at the 100 Saint City, and that the city would have fallen to the hands of the outsiders. He could ignore the casualties of his clansmen, but the loss of the 100 Saint City truly angered him. That was because he was the one who had passed the order to take the 100 Saint City. Now that the outsiders had taken it back, it completely humiliated Getty. It was basically an issue of his pride now. Getty hovered several hundred meters in the air with a darkened expression outside the city while his tremendous presence flooded out. He scanned past the people of the 100 Saint City coldly and said, "Do you really think you'll be fine if you just hide in the city? None of you will be escaping today." With that, Getty immediately lit up with golden light. The laws of metal in the surroundings condensed rapidly, forming a golden sword before Getty in a single instant. It glistened brightly, dyeing the surroundings golden. Swish! The golden sword shot off extremely quickly. It flew towards the rapidly forming barrier of the 100 Saint City in a single instant. Over 60 layers of the barrier had already formed around the 100 Saint City. The layers were pressed together, like a thick wall. When the golden sword stabbed into the first layer gave way easily like paper. Following that was the second layer, third layer, fourth layer, 10th layer. The golden sword was unstoppable. It pierced through over 40 barriers in the blink of an eye, and it rapidly continued through the remaining 20 or so barriers as well. Every single layer of the barrier was able to block the attack of a third heavenly layer Infinite Prime, but before Getty, even several dozen of them were useless. All of the prodigies witnessed this, and they all paled. The formations of the 100 Saint City still need another half a minute at the very least to completely activate. It won't make it. Everyone fall into formation. We need to make some time for the formations. Jin Hong became extremely stern. He immediately gathered everyone, falling into formation with the sacrificial god kings. Yeah, quick, quick, quick. Fall into formation. Quick, fall into formation as quickly as possible. We have to make time so the formation can reach completion. In the face of death, everyone erupted with the potential they were hiding and fell into formation as quickly as they could. Finally, several dozen primordial realm formations appeared just before the golden sword could pierce through the barrier completely. Several dozen balls of light immediately erupted in the city. Everyone unleashed their strongest attack at the golden sword in the air. It was also at this moment that the golden sword finally pierced through the barrier and reached the city. It immediately collided with the several dozen first heavenly layer attacks. Boom! With a deafening boom, the golden sword finally collapsed completely, due to expending too much energy to pierce all those layers of the barrier. It turned into a powerful storm of energy, wreaking havoc in the city. The storm was so powerful that it was even stronger than the storms from when they clashed against Duff. When this storm swept through them with the laws of metal, sacrificial god kings in the formations spurted with blood like they were all heavily injured. They were blown far away, scattered everywhere. In the blink of an eye, several dozen primordial realm formations collapsed just like that. The difference in their strength was just too great. It was basically an untraversable chasm. It could not be made up with quantity. Although they could unleash the might of the primordial realm with their sacrificial soldiers and formations, it was at the first heavenly layer of infinite prime at most, and all it possessed was the energy of the primordial realm, not the laws. A difference still existed when they faced actual primordial realm experts. This was more than enough for dealing with first heavenly layer infinite primes. They could even kill a first heavenly layer infinite prime if they all worked together. Even for those at the second heavenly layer, they could handle them with sufficient teamwork. It would be rather difficult if it was the third heavenly layer. Even though there were several dozen organizations, which was equivalent to several dozen primordial realm formations, the only thing awaiting them would be defeat if they faced against a third heavenly layer infinite prime. Even their chances of survival would be slim. This was the case with just third heavenly layer infinite primes, so it went without saying what would happen against Xueqi, who even surpassed sixth heavenly layer infinite primes of the Saints' world in terms of battle prowess. As a result, even with their most powerful formations, even when they used everything they had, they were unable to endure a half-hearted attack from Xueqi. On the ground in the city, He Chanqian, Ping Yisheng, Bai Zhanxiong, Guan Wanhua and the prodigies were all sheet white. Blood flowed from the corner of their lips as they gazed at the seventh hall master in despair. They had already lost the ability to fight back. All they needed was less than a minute, and the defensive formations of the 100 Saint City would be completely activated. By then, even if they faced against a sixth heavenly layer infinite prime like Xueqi, they would still be able to last until they fixed the teleportation formation, which would allow them to leave safely. It was just a pity that they did not have this time. Although the defensive formations of the city were still developing and strengthening, there was a powerful primordial realm expert right outside the city walls. Why would he just stand aside and wait for the defensive formations to be completed? All of the prodigies understood that their lives were completely at the whim of this person now. Nearby, the pale-faced Jin Hong, who had also been injured, stood up with difficulty. He raised his head to look at the hovering Xueqi. He also seemed rather helpless. He had obtained the legacy of a grand exalt. He had grasped various powerful abilities and secret techniques, so his battle prowess was extremely great. However, it was nowhere close enough for him to hold off a sixth heavenly layer infinite prime as a mid-god king. Senior of the Dark Star race, this one comes from the Chu family. I am willing to represent our Chu family to negotiate with your esteemed race. I hope. Chu Jie wiped away the blood from the corner of his mouth and said to Xueqi politely in the crowd. However, before he could finish, he was interrupted by a cold snort from Xueqi. Humph, I don't care which clan you represent from the Saints' world. You've killed so many of my clansmen today, so no one can save you today. All of you will die, Xueqi said icily. His killing intent was extremely heavy. He knew the defensive formations of the 100 Saint City were still developing. Once it was completed, it would take quite the effort to get through even for him, so he no longer wasted any more time. He waved at the city gently. With that wave, golden light immediately unfurled, transforming into a cloud of golden sword chi. They were as densely packed as rain as they directly shot towards the city as long streaks of light. All of the prodigies could sense the power within these golden strands of sword chi in the city. All of them became despaired, reluctant to just die like this. If this was the Saints' world, it would be impossible for them to be slain by a sixth heavenly layer infinite prime so easily, because they came from peak clans of the Saints' world. Their clans had bestowed them with various powerful trump cards and forms of protection. Even against chaotic primes, there was a chance for them to escape. Unfortunately, the rules that came with their entry into the Darkstar world forbid them from bringing in anything at the god tier with them. This was why all of them seemed so helpless as they faced Xueqi. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2760. A firm stance. However, just when the prodigies of the Saints' world faced death, a powerful sword intent suddenly appeared out of nowhere and flooded the entire place. It seemed to be an invisible will that possessed a certain pressure, as if it could influence the laws there and affect space and time to a certain degree. With the appearance of the powerful sword intent, the golden strands of sword chi that originally shot towards the prodigies and god kings after piercing the barrier seemed to encounter great resistance. Not only did they rapidly grow dim, they halted as well. Getty's face immediately sank when he witnessed this unexpected event. The flames of fury smoldered in his heart, while his eyes became extremely frigid. He knew Kuan Tian was responsible for this. Kuan Tian actually wanted to stop him from killing these outsiders. This was not just a matter of provocation anymore. Instead, Kuan Tian was openly working against him. I want them to die, so they must die. Kuan Tian, do you think you can stop me? Getty was furious. Ever since Kuan Tian broke through to the 6th heavenly layer, he actually stepped over the line more and more frequently. He was actually openly obstructing him today. He could not be forgiven. After all, the entire Dark Star race was under the rule of his 7th Divine Hall for this millennium. According to the rules, the other 9 Divine Halls had no authority nor reason to interfere. Although there were not any corresponding punishments for Divine Halls that forcefully interfered with the internal affairs of the Dark Star race due to the lofty statuses they possessed, it was a severe form of provocation to the Divine Hall in charge. Getty immediately released his soul, dividing it into thousands of segments and embedding them onto the golden sword chi. The sword chi strengthened immediately, shooting towards every single target quickly and forcefully against the suppression of the sword intent. Getty, you're the mighty 7th Hall Master, yet you're actually about to lay your hands on a bunch of God King Juniors. Isn't that stooping a little low? At this moment, a clear laughter rang out from behind. Before he had even finished talking, a figure appeared silently beside Getty. He also hovered several hundred meters in the air, standing right beside Getty. He was the 5th Hall Master who Jian Chen disguised as Kuan Tian. As he said that, Jian Chen extended a finger leisurely and pointed at the city below. With that, a wave of sword rain immediately appeared out of nowhere and collided with Getty's golden sword chi resplendently. Bang! 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 A wave of explosions immediately rang out above the 100 Saint City. It was deafening, just like thunder. Whether it was Jian Chen's white sword chi or the golden sword chi that Getty had condensed from the laws of metal, they all contained tremendous amounts of energy. As a result, every clash and explosion possessed the power of the primordial realm, and what accompanied them were storms of energy. In the blink of an eye, the 100 Saint City was flooded by powerful storms of energy once more. The prodigies and sacrificial god kings hiding in there were as insignificant as ants before the storms. They were blown far away helplessly, leading to countless injuries. When the storm subsided, all of the golden sword chi within the city had vanished. They had all been cleared away by Jian Chen. Kuan Tian, what do you want? A vein bulged from Getty's forehead. He was fuming as he turned around and barked at Jian Chen. If it were not for the fact that Kuan Tian had reached the 6th heavenly layer now and they had just clashed earlier, allowing Getty to learn Kuan Tian's strength, he probably would have lashed out against Kuan Tian already. Compared to Getty's anger, Jian Chen seemed much calmer. He smiled in a nonchalant manner and clasped his fist. Please calm down, 7th Hall Master. Now's not the right time for the outsiders in the 100 Saint City to die. Getty's face had darkened. He stared at Jian Chen viciously like he wanted to kill him. His anger erupted like a volcano as he stressed each word. I'm the one in charge of everything regarding the Dark Star race right now. Their lives are in my hands as well. Your 5th Divine Hall has no right to tell me what to do. Kuan Tian, if you don't give me an appropriate explanation, this won't just end here. Jian Chen remained unfazed. He continued to smile nonchalantly. It's very simple. These outsiders of the 100 Saint City possess extraordinarily powerful backgrounds. My soul's been injured, such that I've lost my past memories, so I need these outsiders to provide me with some heavenly resources or pills that can heal the soul. When he reached there, Jian Chen's smile gradually vanished. He instead became solemn. Even his nonchalant gaze sharpened. He said, healing my soul is a matter of utmost priority. Anyone who gets in my way, no matter who, will be an enemy of me, Kuan Tian. I swear I will never forgive or spare them. When he heard Jian Chen's last resolute sentence that was also brimming with killing intent, Getty could not help but be taken aback. Within the Dark Star race, while the primordial realm experts were in constant conflict with one another and a few small scuffles would happen from time to time, all of it was on a manageable scale. Never in the history of the Dark Star race had anyone uttered what Xueqi had said, where they would never forgive or spare them, basically going down a path of no return. Getty could not help but calm down slightly, but Xueqi's threatening words still displeased him very much. However, he also understood that there was something wrong with Xueqi's head right now. Just earlier, they had actually begun fighting with him over some items that never existed in the first place. This time, it was for the sake of healing his soul and recovering his memories. If Getty really did end up setting him off, who knew what Xueqi was capable of doing in his current deranged state? Even if he could keep him at bay, it would come with a heavy cost. As Jian Chen and Getty confronted each other in the air, the several dozen injured prodigies all gathered together below. As they looked at the two people in the air, they stared at the developing formations in the air nervously and anxiously. Given the current situation, there was nothing they could do now. Even if they fell into formation and poured everyone's strength together, they would not even be able to block a single attack from Getty. As a result, they could only remain in the city and pray that the formation would completely activate a little sooner. Xueqi, you need heavenly resources to heal your soul, but it doesn't have to come from the 100 Saint City. We've gathered quite a few outsiders under our control over the years. These outsiders also come from major organizations in the Saints' world. If you really need heavenly resources, you're more than welcome to exchange with them. Getty calmed down, but his voice was still extremely cold. Humph. How can you compare those organizations to the ones behind the 100 Saint City? Getty, I hope you don't get in my way of healing myself, or this won't be a minor matter anymore, Jian Chen said coldly. Getty said nothing in reply. Cold light flashed through his eyes as he stared right at Jian Chen. Although he knew healing his soul was a valid reason for Xueqi to stop him from destroying the city, it was still somewhat humiliating for him. Hallmaster, the day of the great ceremony is soon. Hallmaster Xueqi's injured soul is indeed a matter of great priority. If Hallmaster Xueqi can recover, then our chances of success with the great ceremony will definitely increase. The two vice hallmasters of the 7th Divine Hall arrived from behind. They all knew what had happened, so they both tried to persuade Getty. Hallmaster Getty, if our hallmaster is unable to recover, it'll affect the great ceremony to a certain degree at the very least. That's something that ties into the fate of our entire race. That's much more important than some measly 100 Saint City. We hope Hallmaster Getty can focus on the bigger picture. Bing Yuan, Taro and Do Wujin arrived behind Jian Chen and clasped their hands at Getty. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2761. Condition. Getty's expression eased up slightly from that. He cared about the upcoming great ceremony very much. Actually, it was not just him. All of the primordial realm experts in the Dark Star race valued the great ceremony more than their own lives. This was because once the ceremony succeeded, the will of the grand exalt of the wood spirits would weaken, and the restraints it posed on them would decrease. By then, the limit of their cultivation would no longer be infinite prime. There would be hopes for them to reach chaotic prime. However, the great ceremony was neither easy to succeed with, nor was it simple. It was extremely complicated, and it required the participation of all primordial realm experts. They had to go through many steps, and even just a tiny error on one of the steps could make the ceremony fail. As a result, Getty understood that if Xueqi's soul remained damaged and he suddenly lost control of himself during the ceremony, it would probably all end in failure even with the increased success rate due to the essence blood of the divine beast. As a result, from a certain perspective, Xueqi's recovery would directly benefit Getty's interests. If that's the case, then I'll spare the 100 Saint City for now. However, they've killed and injured many of our clansmen today. I will be collecting this debt of blood someday, Getty said emotionlessly, before turning around and leaving dramatically. And Lai and K-Soul of the 7th Divine Hall glanced at the 100 Saint City that almost completed its formations. They said nothing and left with their Hall Master. Now, only Jian Chen and the 3 Vice Hall Masters of the 5th Divine Hall remained outside the city. The 4 of them hovered in the air and all looked at it from above. By now, the barrier around the 100 Saint City had already developed 99 layers. When the 99th layer completely enveloped the city, the energy of the entire city suddenly soared. Extremely violent energy surged out from beneath the place. It actually managed to affect the space there, causing it to twist and distort. The 99 layers of the barrier gradually fused together as well. As they merged together, the barrier constantly grew thinner, but its defenses skyrocketed. A while later, the 99 layers had all fused into one, becoming a paper-thin, spherical barrier that was almost invisible to the naked eye. Only now did the prodigies in the city let out sighs of relief. They completely settled down now, because the formations of the 100 Saints city had completely developed and its defenses were completely activated. Even if the 7th Hall Master returned, they could last a few days with the formation. Quick, send people to repair the teleportation formation immediately. A person immediately passed an order within the city. With that, over 100 cultivators who were rather knowledgeable about teleportation formation left the group, rushing towards the teleportation formation as quickly as possible. The teleportation formation was directly connected with the exit that led to the spirit's world. It was their only path of retreat right now. Jian Chen hovered over above and studied the city. He could not help but find it to be rather admirable. He had already managed to see through the formations of the city. They were extremely powerful and constructed out of various different smaller formations. The paper-thin barrier on the surface was only the 100 Saints city's first line of defense. Apart from the barrier, many other formations had secretly unfurled as well, fusing with the space there and operating silently. Just the defenses of the city could easily block the powerful attacks of 7th Heavenly Layer Infinite Primes. Aside from the defensive formations, the 100 Saints city was also hiding offensive formations, trapping formations, illusion formations and so on. These formations layered upon each other perfectly. They were extremely difficult to destroy. To think that just the combination of some supreme quality saint artifacts can create such a powerful formation. They truly are the peak clans of the saints' world. Their handiwork is truly extraordinary, Jian Chen sighed in admiration. It was not difficult to forge so many supreme quality saint artifacts. What was difficult was combining them to create a defensive formation that could even block the attacks of 7th Heavenly Layer Infinite Primes. In the city, Jin Hong, He Qianqian, Ping Yixing and the prodigies all looked at the 4 people in the air. They all appeared hesitant. They obviously could not recognize Jian Chen right now with his disguise as Kuan Tian. However, all of them saw how Jian Chen stopped Getty and nullified Getty's lethal attack from before. Logically speaking, Jian Chen was their savior as he had just saved their lives. Yet, a barrier currently separated them. There was something morally wrong about that. However, what they experienced in the past made them all cautious of the Dark Star race, so they all became rather afraid to open the formation and let him in. The difference in their strength was just too great. If the 4 of them possessed ill will, they would basically be letting in the enemy. They must also be one of the 10 divine halls of the Dark Star race. What do we do? Should we open the formation and invite them in, so we can properly thank them and potentially establish some ties with them? This person must be the master of a hall, seeing how he confronted the 7th Hall Master. We've operated among the Dark Star race for all these years, but all we've managed to rope in are a few Vice Hall Masters. We've never roped in the master of a hall before. This is a fantastic opportunity presented right before us. Once we gain the support of a Hall Master, why would we still have to fear the 7th Divine Hall? No, absolutely not. We don't know what they want, so we can't take any further risks. Just the slightest carelessness could doom us. The leaders of the various organizations all communicated with each other secretly. They engaged in an intense discussion. The 5th Hall Master has personally come to visit the 100 Saints city. Why aren't you welcoming him? At this moment, Bing Yuan, who stood behind Jian Chen, called out with a frown. Clearly, he was displeased with the rudeness of the 100 Saints city. These people sure are ignorant. If the Hall Master hadn't interfered and saved them, they would have all died to Getty already. They wouldn't still be alive right now. Taro and Do Wujin's faces sank slightly as well, displeased with their behavior. Jian Chen remained at ease. He was not displeased at all. Instead, his lips curled up into a nonchalant smile, filled with goodwill. He said with a mild voice, "Don't worry. Since I've saved you, I definitely won't harm you. And, as long as this Hall Master is here, no one will be bold enough to target you in the Dark Star world." When he reached there, Jian Chen paused slightly and changed the topic slightly. "Of course, I'm not helping you for nothing. My condition is that you must bring in some heavenly resources or pills that can heal the soul from the outside world. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 2762. Reactions of the Essence Blood. The disciples and descendants of the various organizations were all stunned by what Jian Chen had said. As a matter of fact, many of them even tried cleaning out their ears, as if they had heard incorrectly. The Dark Star race often made deals with them. As a matter of fact, they had even undertaken numerous high-value deals with high-ranking members of the Dark Star race in the past. However, the people they dealt with every time would basically be God King's subordinates. Primordial Realm experts rarely ever showed themselves. This was the first time in all these years for a Hall Master to personally appear like this. As a result, everyone became rather stunned by what Jian Chen had said. However, they returned to their senses very soon. They were surprised and overjoyed. In the past, the 10 Divine Halls had only made contact with them using God Kings under the orders of Vice Hall Masters. Yet a Hall Master was actually standing right in front of them today. Everyone realized just how rare this opportunity was. If they made good use of this chance, they could potentially rope in a major figure like a Hall Master. This was much better than roping in a few Vice Hall Masters. At the very least, the Vice Hall Masters they had bribed with numerous resources had been completely useless when the 7th Hall Master attacked. The 5th Hall Master before them right now was different. He was a vicious person bold enough to directly oppose the 7th Hall Master. If they obtained the support of someone like him, it would save them a lot of trouble from the Dark Star race in the future. And the threat of the 7th Divine Hall would be resolved in the process too. Agreeing on this point, the people in the 100 Saints City gradually became excited. However, there were still many people who wavered over opening the barrier and letting in the 5th Hall Master. Open the barrier and invite the 5th Hall Master in. In the end, it was Jin Hong who made the decision. He secretly communicated to all of the prodigies, "Don't worry, everyone. If the 5th Divine Hall wants us to die, he wouldn't have saved us earlier. And I believe the 5th Hall Master won't stoop as low as laying his hands on us with the honorable status he possesses." This directly touched on everyone's safety, so Jin Hong did not have full control over this decision. He needed everyone's approval. In the end, with everyone's agreement, the barrier of the 100 Saints City gradually opened up. It did not recede completely. Only a passageway the size of the city gates opened in the air. Afterwards, Jin Hong flew out of the city first. He approached Jian Chen steadily, displaying high levels of respect. Behind him, a few prodigies finally made up their minds after a while of hesitation and also flew over. All of them set aside their normal arrogance. They all behaved extremely submissively, showing great deals of respect. They understood that while in the Saints' world, they were figures who held great influence, even able to directly call upon certain infinite primes or even chaotic prime, but in the Dark Star world, they were nothing. They did not even have control over their lives. Not to mention, they had barely survived a threat just earlier. As a result, none of them dared to act arrogantly now. Jian Chen hovered in the air with his hands behind his back. He seemed to be in thought. He wondered about how he should undertake the negotiation with these people of the 100 Saints City. He had saved the city from Getty under the guise of healing his damaged soul. Since that was the case, he had to set up a series of conditions and demands befitting this reason, and he had to be strict with his demands to avoid raising suspicion. Just as Jian Chen pondered, the droplet of essence blood from the ancient sky wolf in his body began to rouse. As if it had been summoned, it awakened from its slumbering state and became active. The reaction from the essence blood immediately alarmed Jian Chen. He saw Jin Hong rapidly draw closer. Only then did he remember Jin Hong had received the legacy of the ancient sky wolf. Whenever they were in close proximity of one another, the droplet of essence blood would act up. And Jin Hong would be able to sense the reaction from the essence blood too at close distances. Previously in the Two World Mountains, Wan Chen had managed to read Jin Hong's mind from how he reacted. However, he was the 5th Hall Master Kuan Tian right now. If Jin Hong sensed the essence blood on him, he could be easily exposed. "I'll leave the discussions to you. You know what I want." Jian Chen knew he had to go. He handed the matters to the Vice Hall Masters before turning around and leaving. In just a single step, he had traveled several dozen kilometers, and by the time he took the second step, he had completely vanished. Having followed Kuan Tian for all these years, The three Vice Hall Masters found Jian Chen's sudden departure to be rather sudden, but they did not think too much about it. I am Jin Hong. Greetings to the three Vice Hall Masters. The three Vice Hall Masters and the Hall Master have saved our lives. We will never forget your kindness. Jin Hong had already arrived before the three Vice Hall Masters now. He hovered around 3 meters below the Vice Hall Masters as he bowed with his hands clasped. Behind him, the various prodigies all copied him. Without a hint of arrogance, they all bowed in utter respect. Looking at these courteous outsiders, the three Vice Hall Masters remained unfazed. With their statuses in the Dark Star race, they had already grown numb to courteous greetings. Bing Yuan, we'll leave it all up to you. We'll be waiting for the good news from you, said Taro in a rather bored manner. He left with Dou Wujin. Bing Yuan had grown accustomed to this already. He was the weakest in the Fifth Divine Hall. During the times when the Fifth Divine Hall was in charge, he basically handled all the affairs that required a primordial realm expert. He ran around everywhere. Bing Yuan looked at them calmly and said nonchalantly, "Spare the gestures of courtesy. Let's cut to the chase and get right to it. You all know the reason why our Hall Master saved you. Our Fifth Divine Hall is in need of pills and medicines that can heal the soul. Of course, rare heavenly resources can work too. Yep, anything is fine as long as it's beneficial to the soul. Our Divine Hall won't mistreat you if you can produce those items." As soon as Bing Yuan had finished talking, many prodigies began to rummage through their own space rings. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2763. Envoy of the Seventh Divine Hall. They had been sent into the Dark Star world by their clans this time to deal with the sources of instability, but also to gather some resources that only the Dark Star world could produce for their clans. This was why they all carried large quantities of cultivation resources. These resources were basically all items that people of the Dark Star world required for cultivation. It spanned an extremely vast range, from the notes and experiences of cultivation and comprehension from past people, to various recovery pills and heavenly resources, to materials for forging artifacts. As these items could not exceed the god tier, none of them were particularly precious to the peak clans, so even if they were lost in the process, it did not matter too much. However, they were still desirable items that people of the Dark Star race were willing to fight over and bleed for. That was because the Dark Star world could not produce anything like those. That included heavenly resources and pills that could heal the soul. The prodigies all possessed quite a lot of them. Basically every single one of them had prepared some, just in case they needed to use it on themselves at times of need. Now that they heard the Seventh Divine Hall required these heavenly resources and pills, the prodigies did not hesitate at all. They took out all of their best pills or heavenly resources and delivered them enthusiastically to Bing Yuan. They all knew this was a great opportunity to rope in the Fifth Divine Hall, which would earn their clans some advantages within the Dark Star world in the future. None of them were willing to pass up such a rare opportunity. Immediately, they produced a large assortment of heavenly resources and pills. All of them were precious items that were beneficial to the soul. There were over 100 different types in total. With so many heavenly resources and pills gathered in one place, they immediately blended together and produced off a special, heavy fragrance. This is something unique to our Darkness clan. It is highly beneficial to the soul. Not only can it mend the soul, it can also strengthen it. This junior will now be offering this to the Fifth Divine Hall in hopes of making some contributions to the Fifth Divine Hall. The prodigy from the Darkness clan took out a black pearl. As soon as it appeared, it gave off the faint power of the soul. Immediately, everyone's gazes locked onto the black pearl. Many of them even cried out. That's the Darkness clan's soul-storing pearl. It said that the way the pearl is created is extremely vicious. It requires a soul to be directly extracted from a cultivator, before being tossed into a cauldron and refined like a pill using a special secret technique of the Darkness clan. With the addition of a few special materials, it forcefully condenses the cultivator's soul into a pearl. Soul-storing pearls are priceless. It's said that a single soul-storing pearl is worth several dozen, or even hundreds, of times more than heavenly resources and pills of the same grade. And it rarely ever appears on the market. Although the method of creating soul-storing pearls is rather cruel, their effects are extremely well-renowned. They are extremely beneficial to the soul, so their value only makes sense. And I heard some of the items that go into refining soul-storing pearls are extremely rare, such that even the Darkness clan can only refine very few of them at a time. Items are priced by their rarity after all. The appearance of the soul-storing pearl immediately attracted the attention of many prodigies. They were astounded. It was also something that could heal the soul, but it was completely different from the pills and heavenly resources they had offered up. That was because these pills and heavenly resources were not worth the attention of peak clans as long as they were below the god tier, so to their clans, these were only goods of standard quality, or even substandard quality. Soul-storing pearls were different. Regardless of how precious they were or their effects on the soul, they completely surpassed these heavenly resources and pills. As a result, all of these prodigies felt like their heavenly resources and pills had become lackluster as soon as the soul-storing pearl appeared. This is a heavenly resource that grows in the forbidden grounds of our wolf clan. We call it the soul-grooming grass. I, Jin Hong, will be using this opportunity to offer it up to the 5th Divine Hall. Jin Hong took out another heavenly resource and it immediately led to a series of gasps. It was extremely difficult for soul-grooming grasses to grow. They would only grow on the graves of the past seniors of the wolf clan. It was also a unique product of the wolf clan. Afterwards, a few more prodigies weighed their options, before finally making up their minds and taking out what they actually valued. They had originally prepared these wondrous items for themselves. At crucial times, they could even potentially save their lives. However, in order to rope in the colossal existence that the 5th Divine Hall was, they could no longer afford to hold back anymore. Bing Yuan did not hold back either. He accepted all of the items from the prodigies, before passing over a space ring which held the unique products of the Dark Star world. He was trading with the prodigies. All of these prodigies wanted to establish ties with the 5th Divine Hall, so they would never accept anything from Bing Yuan. All of them turned it down without any hesitation. They threw in a great deal of praises as well. Bing Yuan was no fool. He could obviously tell what these prodigies were thinking. Fortunately, he did not insist on them to accept the space ring. He accepted the resources and said, "I will report to the Hallmaster exactly what has happened here, but what happens in the end will still be up to the Hallmaster's decision." Bing Yuan did not give any promises. He could obviously handle all regular matters with ease, but the problem that the 100 Saints City faced originated from the 7th Hallmaster. That was beyond his control. With that, Bing Yuan left this place with all those items that specifically treated the soul. However, he had his doubts. These items are nice. As a matter of fact, I haven't even seen some of them before, but their grades are just too low. The Hallmaster is a 6th heavenly layer infinite prime, so will items at such a low grade really help the injuries of his soul? Sigh, whatever. Heavenly resources that benefit the soul don't appear in our Dark Star race, and they're very difficult to raise as well. We can only rely on these outsiders now. Jian Chen leaned on his arm as he sat back lazily in the throne that belonged to the Hallmaster within the levitating 5th Divine Hall in the capital city. He furrowed his brows in thought. "Hallmaster, just as you've ordered, I've brought back a large number of items that can heal the soul from the 100 Saints City." At this moment, Bing Yuan entered the hall, having returned from the 100 Saints City. He took out a space ring and added, "The outsiders of the 100 Saints City gave us all of these heavenly resources for free. They hope to earn your support, Hallmaster." Jian Chen waved his hand and the space ring immediately flew into his hand. He rubbed the space ring with his finger as he smiled for some reason. He said, "Getty sure has some deep grievances with the 100 Saints City. If I had been a little slower this time, probably all of the outsiders in the city would have died to Getty. These outsiders all know that it's impossible for the defenses of the city to keep Getty at bay long term. They don't want to lose the city. They want to maintain what they have in the Dark Star world, which is why they seek protection from our 5th Divine Hall." However, as soon as he reached there, Jian Chen suddenly raised an eyebrow and looked outside. "Hallmaster, the 7th Divine Hall has sent an envoy to see you." At this moment, an armored guard stationed in the 5th Divine Hall rushed in and reported politely after kneeling down. "The 7th Divine Hall sent an envoy? Hee, we're so close to one another, so why doesn't Getty come find me himself? Why must he send an envoy?" Jian Chen's smile became even more mysterious. He said, "Let him in. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip, you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2764. Spying Getty. The guard of the fifth divine hall obliged and immediately ran out again. Very soon, the envoy from the seventh divine hall entered the fifth divine hall. He was a late god king. He was extremely polite, basically walking into the divine hall with his head lowered the entire time. He did not even have the courage to glance at Jian Chen. "Greetings to the fifth hall master," the envoy said politely. Jian Chen laid back on his throne and glanced past the envoy indifferently. He said in an unconcerned manner, "Speak. Why has Getty sent you?" The envoy gathered his focus before saying carefully, "Esteemed fifth hall master, this one has come to disturb sir in order to deliver a message from my master. My master has said that he can provide all the heavenly resources that the hall master requires, in hopes that the hall master can give up on the 100 Saint City. Go back and tell Getty that only the 100 Saint City can provide me with what I need. Send him off." Jian Chen did not want to deal with him at all. After expressing that his mind was already made, he directly dismissed the envoy. The envoy was troubled. He said, "Esteemed fifth hall master dash, you're dismissed." Li Qingshan frowned and immediately called out, causing the envoy to shudder in fright. He no longer dared to utter another word. After bowing politely, he left the fifth divine hall carefully. After the envoy had left, Li Qingshan laid back in his throne and sank into his thoughts. Looks like Getty really doesn't want to give up on the 100 Saint City. Does he have some particularly deep grievances with the 100 Saint City? After a while, Jian Chen suddenly said, "Bing Yuan." "Yes, hall master. Keep an eye out for the 100 Saint City. I still need them right now, so make sure Getty doesn't do anything to them, which would delay my recovery." "Don't worry, hall master. I will definitely keep an eye out for the seventh divine hall at all times. I can guarantee you that they won't even have the chance to touch the 100 Saint City." Bing Yuan clasped his fist. He glanced at the space ring in Jian Chen's hand and continued, "Hallmaster, you better check the heavenly resources first and see if they are help your soul or not. We too hope the Hallmaster can recover his memories soon." "Fair enough." Jian Chen arrived in Kuan Tian's cultivation room with the space ring before emptying it out. Very soon, over 100 different types of heavenly resources and pills that targeted the soul heaped up before him in a pile. "Is this a soul-storing pearl?" The only reason why I know the existence of this object was because I had read through the records of the peak clans that had been destroyed from the cloud plane back then. And this seems to be an illusionary soul-splitting grass. It's extremely rare in the saints' world, so much so that it's priceless. It's just a pity that the grade's a little low. And this 9-layered tribulations fire lotus. It's a supreme grade heavenly resource that can consolidate the soul. Normally in the saints' world, it's something you can only come across by luck. And this, even with Jian Chen's composure, he could not help but gasp when he saw these various heavenly resources. These varieties of heavenly resources were just far too unusual and far too rare. Even within the saints' world, they were enough to make countless people jealous. If it were not for the fact that their grades were a little low, they were probably enough for primordial realm experts to die over them. These are all heavenly resources that treat the soul. Not only can they heal the soul, they can strengthen it too, or even purify the soul. The Tian Yuan clan has obtained tremendous amounts of resources left behind by those organizations. But even with that being the case, they still don't possess so many items that are beneficial to the soul. I really want to take these heavenly resources back to the Tian Yuan clan, Jian Chen thought. He was not particularly interested in these items because not only was he a primordial realm expert now, his soul had fused with a strand of chaotic force, so it was different from regular people's. No matter how effective these heavenly resources and pills were on the soul, they could not bring any benefits to a primordial realm expert like him. Although he understood this, Jian Chen also knew that he had to ingest some of them. Only then would it match the reason for why he had collected these heavenly resources in the first place. In the end, Jian Chen selectively ingested most of the heavenly resources and pills. He kept some of the rarer heavenly resources and pills to hand over to the Tian Yuan clan once he returned to the saints' world. Jian Chen remained in the secret room for 3 whole days before leaving. He returned to the majestic hall and discovered Bing Yuan, Taro and Dou Wujin had already been waiting for him. Clearly, they had waited for a very long time already. As soon as they saw Jian Chen, hope flooded their eyes. Dou Wujin asked, Hallmaster, has your soul recovered? Do you recall some of your past memories now? Dou Wujin, Taro and Bing Yuan all looked at Jian Chen with shining eyes. They were eager to know. Jian Chen walked slowly, making his way over to the throne and sitting down steadily. He exhaled deeply. A heavy fragrance immediately wafted from his breath, filling the entire hall. Just when Jian Chen wanted to speak, his expression suddenly changed. His indifferent gaze immediately sharpened as the powerful senses of his soul flooded out. He said coldly, "Getty, if you want to see, then come in person. Spying on my fifth divine hall with the senses of your soul is extremely rude. Are you challenging my fifth divine hall by any chance?" As he said that, the senses of Jian Chen's soul suddenly condensed and stabbed towards Getty's incoming senses like an invisible sword. The two senses collided together and the space there seemed to creak. Even though not a single shred of energy leaked out, the space clearly shook. "Humph, Kuan Tian, I'm just checking to see whether your memory's recovered or not. I never thought you'd actually lose your mind again over such a small matter. Looks like you still have amnesia." Getty projected an illusionary figure of himself into the hall. His expression was rather ugly as he glanced coldly at Jian Chen on the throne. After the cold statement, he vanished into thin air. Bing Yuan, Taro and Dou Wujin's expressions were all rather ugly. The fifth divine hall might not have any particularly powerful formations shielding the place from the senses of souls, allowing experts to infiltrate this place with the senses of their souls freely, but that was extremely disrespectful behavior to all divine halls. It was also a form of severe provocation. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2765. God King Grass. Just as the senses of Jian Chen and Getty's souls collided, the 10th Hall Master Feng Shui slowly opened her eyes in a secret room within the 10th Divine Hall nearby. She looked in the direction of the 5th Divine Hall and seemed to be able to see through the various obstacles in the way, locking onto Jian Chen's current position with great precision. Kuan Tian and Getty have just clashed with the senses of their souls. He actually failed to lose the upper hand. He can contend with Getty evenly now. I never thought Kuan Tian's soul would grow by so much from his breakthrough this time. Looks like his soul must have been viciously refined in the land of soul destruction, Feng Shui said softly as she smiled. Clearly, she was in an extremely good mood. However, when she thought about how Kuan Tian could not recall a single detail of the past, she sighed and murmured, "I wonder if he's recovered his memories." The heavy door to the secret room gradually opened. Feng Shui tidied her clothes and smoothed out her hair, before walking out quickly with small strides. In the 7th hall, Getty's face had sunken from anger as he sat on the hallmaster's throne. He struck the armrest viciously and reduced it to dust. He grinded his teeth. Why is Kuan Tian becoming more and more powerful? He's only just broken through to the 6th heavenly layer, yet not only has his battle prowess completely exceeded what he should possess after just breaking through, even his soul's become so much stronger. It's actually no weaker than mine now. There's something wrong with his soul right now, so it should be affected to a certain degree no matter what. How is it still so powerful? Getty struggled to understand this. Ever since Kuan Tian broke through in the land of soul destruction, his strength had basically shot off like a rocket. It increased in an overwhelming manner, completely upheaving logic. Perhaps Kuan Tian actually obtained a fortuitous encounter in the land of soul destruction? Thinking up to there, Getty immediately sank into his thoughts. Even though he had already guessed this a long time ago, he had never been willing to admit it, because Kuan Tian was his rival. The stronger Kuan Tian was, the more disadvantageous it would be for him. Hallmaster, has Kuan Tian already recovered his memories? Vice Hallmaster and Lai asked below. Getty shook his head. I know Kuan Tian extremely well. If his memories have returned, I'll be able to discern it instantly from the way he acts and speaks. However, the Kuan Tian I saw earlier still seemed to be extremely unfamiliar, so his memories must not have returned yet. Then Hallmaster about the 100 Saint City, Lai said. Getty gradually calmed down. He sat on the throne for a while in thought before saying slowly, Kuan Tian's extremely determined to protect the 100 Saint City, while he behaves like a madman without his past memories. I could tell from his gaze back then that he's willing to fight me to the death for the 100 Saints City. He's probably willing to go to whatever lengths he needs to recover his memories. Let's not touch the 100 Saints City before Kuan Tian recovers his memories. After some consideration, Getty chose to give up on the 100 Saints City temporarily. If he could destroy the 100 Saints City effortlessly, he would never let the opportunity slip by. However, if it came with the risk of a vicious battle with Kuan Tian, that he would be injured if he wanted to touch the 100 Saints City, he did not believe it was worth it. All battles occurred under the circumstances that it could provide enough benefits to justify it. If there were sufficient, justifiable benefits to the battle, he would be willing to fight Kuan Tian. However, the destruction of the 100 Saints City was clearly not worth that much in Kuan Tian's eyes. In the fifth divine hall, Jian Chen repelled Kuan Tian's soul like he had done something insignificant. He cast his gaze towards the three very pale vice hall masters and said slowly, "My memories still haven't returned. These heavenly resources and pills are rather low in grade, so their effects on me are limited. Keep negotiating with the people of the 100 Saints City and get them to find a way to bring in items of better quality and grades." When he said that, Bing Yuan became troubled. "Hallmaster, due to the limitations of the passageway between the two worlds, the heavenly resources and pills that the outsiders can bring in must be below God tier. It'll be quite difficult. You don't need to worry about that. Just conveying what I said to them." "Oh right, which products of our Dark Star world do the outsiders value the most, which they will purchase at high prices?" Jian Chen asked. Bing Yuan contemplated the question. "So far, there are 6 heavenly resources and 4 materials from our world that attract the outsiders the most. All of these items have reached God tier. The formation of these items is linked to the ancestor of our race and the planetary beast. Some of these heavenly resources and wondrous ores have mutated over countless years from the blood, presence and energy left behind by our ancestor and the planetary beast. All of these items valuable enough to cause a bloodbath between peak organizations in the Saints' world. That's because some of these items can be used to forge high-quality or even supreme-quality God artifacts and supreme-quality God tier pills. Of course, we've never traded any of these items with the outsiders. One reason is because of their rarity, while another is because the outsiders just can't produce anything of equal value." Bing Yuan explained to Jian Chen in detail. Although he had never been to the outside world, he had his fair share of contact with the outsiders. And the outsiders he had come into contact with all possessed extraordinary statuses in the outside world. Moreover, the Dark Star race had also tried to obtain some records of the Saints' world from these outsiders, so they did know quite a lot about the Saints' world. As a matter of fact, they understood the Saints' world better than most cultivators of the Saints' world. Aside from these God tier items, there's also the God King grass. The outsiders have a huge demand for because they need the God King grass to refine 100 Tribulations God King pills, said Bing Yuan. Jian Chen's heart skipped a beat. Yep. I saw how the outsiders possessed quite a lot of sacrificial God Kings. We must possess quite a lot of God King grass then. Bing Yuan smiled mysteriously. You're completely correct, Hallmaster. God King grass is nothing precious to our race, because our race can grow it constantly. We can produce several tens of thousand stalks every century. In our eyes, God King grass is worth nothing. Only the outsiders treat it like treasure. And God King grass is divided into various grades as well. What we trade with the outsiders is only God King grass of the lowest, most inferior quality, and the quantity is controlled, such that each organization can receive no more than 5,000 stalks. Otherwise, if they get their hands on too much God King grass and produce hundreds of thousands or even millions of God Kings, we would be in quite the trouble. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2766. A colossal discovery. Jian Chen was truly surprised this time. He knew the God King grass Bing Yuan spoke of was actually the 100 Tribulations grass to the outsiders. It was just a different name for it. He had been in contact with the people of the 100 Saints City when he was in the Two World Mountains. He had learned from them that the 100 Tribulations grass used to refine 100 Tribulations God King pills were extremely precious, because the grass only grew in the Dark Star world. As a result, they would often have to spend quite a large sum in exchange for stalks of 100 Tribulations grass from the Dark Star race. He originally believed that even if the dark star race did produce the main ingredient to the pill, they could not produce too much of it. Only after hearing it from Bing Yuan did he learn just how worthless the 100 Tribulations grass were in the eyes of the dark star race, despite being valued by all the prodigies. The dark star race could produce several tens of thousands stalks of 100 Tribulations grass every century. After all these years, the dark star race would have produced a truly unimaginable amount of 100 Tribulations grass. Then just what is the difference between God King grasses of different qualities? Jian Chen continued. Right now, he felt rather fortunate. Fortunate that he was disguised as Kuan Tian who had lost his memories. Otherwise, with how clueless he was with the common knowledge of the dark star race, it would be just too easy for him to be exposed. Now that he was supposed to be an amnesiac, it provided a fantastic cover for his ignorance. Bing Yuan pondered the question for a while, as if he was trying to find where to start. Hallmaster, let me explain instead. Dou Wujin clasped his fist. While we haven't managed to pinpoint the exact differences between the different grades of God King grass, but we're able to deduce a rough difference if we use the sacrificial God Kings that the outsiders have nurtured with the God King grass as a reference. We divide God King grass into a total of 3 grades, which are low grade, mid grade and high grade. You've already seen the effects of God King pills refined from low grade God King grass, Hallmaster. They can elevate any cultivator to early God King within a short amount of time, but the downside is that they only possess the strength of early God Kings without grasping the laws of God Kings. Moreover, their lifespan will be limited to a century at most, which is why the outsiders called it the 100 Tribulations God King pill. As for mid-grade God King grass, we've managed to deduce from many years of research that the results should be similar, but the person who ingests the 100 Tribulations God King pill refined from mid-grade God King grass should also possess the same level of comprehension. In other words, if you refine 100 Tribulations God King pills with mid-grade God King grass, not only will the ingester possess a cultivation at early God King, they will have grasped the laws of early God Kings too. Their lifespans will still be limited to a century. As for the final high-grade God King grass, our primordial realm experts and Emperor have personally forecasted that they should make up for all the flaws of God King pills. Only God King pills refined from high-grade God King grass can be considered to be perfect, because high-grade God King pills can break the restraints of the century-long lifespan, allowing the ingester to truly become a regular God King. Not only will they possess the cultivation and comprehension of the God King realm, their lifespans will be unaffected too. Moreover, cultivators who ingest low-grade or mid-grade God King pills have no chance at breaking through again. Until death, their strength will remain at early God King. However, this is different for people who broke through with high-grade God King pills. They can keep cultivating, with hopes of reaching higher realms of cultivation. Jian Chen was utterly astounded when he heard about the nigh-impossible effects of high-grade God King grass. Even with his mental fortitude, he struggled to remain calm. That was because he knew just too well what high-grade God King grass represented. If he possessed a large quantity of high-grade God King grass, he could easily create a permanent army of God Kings. Most importantly, this army of God Kings could continue to grow stronger through their own hard work. Of course, this was only one aspect. There were also a large number of cultivators in the Saints' world, who had an extremely slim chance at becoming God Kings, or no chance at all. If they knew that there was a pill that could turn them into God Kings without any side effects, it was as clear as day that these people would go crazy for it. They would be willing to give up everything they possessed just for an opportunity to become a God King. And among these people, there would definitely be a few precious items that they managed to obtain through various special circumstances. The fruit of nurturing ways growing in the Dark Star world was the best example of this. And the peak organizations of the Saints' world also required a large number of God Kings to fill up their ranks. Among these peak organizations, infinite primes were all figures on par to elders. God Kings formed their primary force. In that instant, Jian Chen thought of many things. It also allowed him to see the value of high-grade God King grass more clearly. If just a few stalks of high-grade God King grass were brought to the Saints' world, it'd obviously be far too insignificant to make any ripples, but if a large quantity was brought over, it would be a completely different story. How many stalks of high-grade God King grass are there? Jian Chen did his best to hide his excitement as he asked with a calm front. However, he became extremely nervous when he asked that question. Even his heart began to thump uncontrollably. He was worried, extremely worried that there would not be enough high-grade God King grass. If there were just a few stalks, they would not be as useful. If there were enough, he would definitely be able to create an army of god kings in the saints' world. In his understanding, only the Dark Star world could create an army entirely composed of god kings, because the Dark Star race never fought amongst themselves. They had managed to accumulate a large number of god kings over all these years. As for the saints' world, where intense battles were rampant and it was filled with deception, even peak organizations with several million members would not be able to assemble an army of god kings. Hallmaster, high-grade god king grass doesn't appear as easily as low-grade god king grass. They're much rarer. Out of the several tens of thousands stalks of god king grass we produce each century, 99% of them are low-grade god king grass. Only the remaining 1% is mid-grade and high-grade god king grass. And among that 1%, roughly 99% of them are mid-grade god king grass. As a result, the chance for high-grade god king grass to appear is 1 in 10,000. On average, only a single stalk of high-grade god king grass will appear within 10,000 stalks, Do Wujin explained. Only a single stalk of high-grade god king grass will appear within 10,000 stalks, but you produce several tens of thousand stalks of god king grass each century. That means that there's a few stalks of high-grade god king grass every century. If you calculate like that, a millennia would be several dozen stalks, 10 millennia would be a few hundred stalks, and a million years would be several tens of thousand stalks. We still should have amassed quite a lot of high-grade god king grass over these years, right? Jian Chen's heart beat faster and faster. He squinted his eyes slightly at Do Wujin as he forcefully maintained his composure, eager to hear his reply. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2767. Easily obtained. Hallmaster, we have indeed accumulated some high-grade god king grass, but high-grade god king grass must be placed within special spiritual jade for it to be preserved over long periods of time. Our world doesn't have any spiritual jade. All of it comes from the outsiders, so the amount of high-grade god king grass we can store at a time is limited. And although we don't have the ability to refine the high-grade god king grass into pills like the outsiders, they still originate from the residual laws of our ancestor, so they possess certain slivers of comprehension from our ancestor. As a result, we often study the high-grade god king grass, which obviously depletes some of them as well. As a result, we might not have as much high-grade god king grass as you originally imagined, Hallmaster, said Do Wujin. With that, Jian Chen's burning heart was immediately put out like a bucket of water had been thrown over him. He was utterly disappointed. How many exactly do we have? Bing Yuan closed his eyes and sank into his thoughts, as if he was checking. Only afterwards did he report to Jian Chen, Hallmaster, our fifth divine hall has roughly 30,000 stalks of high-grade god king grass. How much exactly? Jian Chen quivered and immediately sat up straight. Bing Yuan thought Jian Chen wanted an exact number, so he replied with greater precision this time, 31,621 in total. Jian Chen gasped. When Do Wujin told him there was not a lot of high-grade god king grass, he thought there were only a few dozen or a few hundred of them, but he never thought, not a lot would be equivalent to 30,000. If all the high-grade god king grass were refined into pills, that was equivalent to creating over 30,000 regular god kings. While that might have been nothing to the Dark Star race, it was quite the size in the Saints' world. Did you just mention our fifth divine hall earlier? Are you saying that these 30,000 stalks all belong to our fifth divine hall? And why aren't we able to refine the high-grade god king grass into pills like the outsiders? Jian Chen asked. Hallmaster, the 10 divine halls all hold a portion of the Dark Star race's resources. The 30,000 or so stalks of high-grade god king grass all belong to our fifth divine hall, Do Wujin answered his query. After a pause he continued, aside from our fifth divine hall, the other 9 divine halls have all accumulated some as well. However, the amount varies. As for refining the pills, Do Wujin became utterly helpless when that was mentioned. In order to refine them into pills, not only do we need large amounts of supplementary materials, we also need someone with great mastery in alchemy. The outsiders have always maintained a monopoly over the supplementary materials, preventing anyone from taking them into our Dark Star world. Of course, that's not the important part. Even if they try to maintain a monopoly, we still have our ways to get some of these materials from the outsiders. The true issue is that our race hasn't produced a skilled alchemist, even after all these years. Without the corresponding ability, we can't refine them into actual pills even if we gather all the supplementary materials. As a result, the only value that the God King grasses offer to us is the tiny sliver of laws they contain from our ancestor. I see. Jian Chen was enlightened, and he secretly rejoiced as well. Just the fifth divine hall alone possessed over 30,000 stalks of high-grade God King grass. If the other 9 halls were included, wouldn't the number surpass 100,000? He was confident that it would not be too difficult to get his hands on all the high-grade God King grass from the other divine halls if he offered the divine halls a few items they required with his identity as the 5th hall master. Even if he could not obtain all of it, just a portion of it would be enough. Jian Chen had already begun fantasizing about a certain moment in the future when the Tian Yuan clan would suddenly gain 100,000 God Kings. Just how glorious would that be? Go and bring me all of the high-grade God King grass. Jian Chen waved his hands and passed an order. It was better for him to get his hands on the high-grade God King grass right now, because who knew what would happen in the future? As for the God King grass that the other divine halls possessed, he needed to come up with something that would interest them in exchanging with him. Bing Yuan hesitated. Hallmaster, are you planning to exchange the high-grade God King grass with the outsiders? The Emperor has passed strict orders forbidding any exchanges involving high-grade God King grass with the outsiders. Otherwise, once the outsiders raise several tens of thousand or even over 100,000 God Kings, it'll become a great threat to us. Don't worry. I won't exchange the high-grade God King grass with the outsiders. Go and fetch them for me. Jian Chen passed another order with absolute authority. Yes, Hall Master. Bing Yuan said nothing this time. He directly went to fetch the God King grass. To them, the high-grade God King grass was nothing of particularly great value, mainly because they had never been able to use it properly, and because it just grew too quickly. Before long, Bing Yuan delivered a space ring with over 30,000 stalks of high-grade God King grass to Jian Chen's hands. As soon as Jian Chen received the space ring, he peered into it eagerly and discovered a great, neat stack of jade boxes. Every single jade box held a stalk of high-grade God King grass. With over 30,000 high-grade God King grass in his possession, Jian Chen's emotions surged. He was in high spirits and completely excited. These were stalks of high-grade God King grass. The God Kings created from them were on a completely different level to the sacrificial God Kings of the 100 Saint City. Of course, this was just an internal reaction. He remained at ease on the surface, without showing any of his thoughts. Afterwards, Jian Chen asked about the most precious supreme quality God tier resources that the Dark Star race had to offer. He learned that all of these items were nothing special in the beginning. They had been either contaminated with some grand exalt blood, or they had fused with the residual power of the planetary beast. After evolving for countless years, they completely changed, turning them into peak God tier resources. In simpler words, the birth of these peak God tier items all had to do with supreme experts. The only pity was that all of these resources remained in the Dark Star Emperor's possession. He had maintained a collection of them over countless years for purely symbolic reasons. These peak God tier resources were extremely tough, such that even regular Grand Primes could not refine them. With the strength that the Dark Star Emperor possessed, all he could do was treat them as a collector's items. Suddenly, Jian Chen looked outside the Divine Hall. He saw a tall, graceful figure appear at the entrance, making her way over slowly. She was a middle-aged woman, both graceful and dignified. She gave off a bearing of authority. Even though she was already middle-aged, her charm still remained. He could still make out her beauty when she was younger from her delicate appearance. She was the 10th Hall Master, Feng Shui. Bing Yuan, Taro and Dou Wujin, who had just been talking with Jian Chen, saw Feng Shui arrive and immediately shut up. They clasped their fists at Feng Shui before leaving by themselves. In the blink of an eye, all that remained in the large hall was Jian Chen and Feng Shui. So you've come, Hall Master Feng Shui. I failed to welcome you from afar, so I do hope you can forgive me. Jian Chen stood up from the throne and walked over, clasping his fist and greeting Feng Shui warmly. He had learned from the Vice Hall Masters that Kuan Tian was on very good terms with Feng Shui, so he obviously could not treat her coldly. Feng Shui stood quietly in the center of the hall, staring straight at Jian Chen with her beautiful eyes. Her emotions were extremely mixed. There was sorrow, pity, as well as dejection and disappointment. In the past, you always called my sister Feng. You've never called me Hall Master Feng Shui. Feng Shui sighed gently. Jian Chen shook his head with a bitter smile. I can't recall a single matter of the past anymore. Aside from the land of soul destruction, I've forgotten about everything else. You know that, Sister Feng. Feng Shui stared straight at Jian Chen and continued asking, aside from the land of soul destruction, have you really forgotten about everything else? Noticing Feng Shui's gaze, Jian Chen was left at a loss slightly, because Feng Shui just appeared to be slightly sad for some reason. At this moment, he suddenly remembered how the relationship between Kuan Tian and Feng Shui seemed to be a little more than just friends. He immediately became troubled. Don't tell me there's actually something going on between Kuan Tian and Feng Shui. However, before Jian Chen could answer her, Feng Shui suddenly grabbed Jian Chen by his hand. She said gently, "Come with me. I'll take you somewhere." Afterwards, she took off in the air, pulling Jian Chen along without giving any further explanations, directly flying out of the capital city. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2768. In no position to enjoy with his hand held by Feng Shui, Jian Chen felt slightly uncomfortable, because he was not Kuan Tian, but Jian Chen. No matter what Kuan Tian and Feng Shui's relationship was or how close they were to one another, none of it had anything to do with him. Yet, it just happened to be inappropriate for Jian Chen to object or put up any resistance, because Feng Shui held his hand easily and naturally. Clearly, this was not the first time, and it also meant she was extremely familiar with Kuan Tian. If he behaved a little too eccentrically, it would only make Feng Shui suspicious of him. As a result, even though Jian Chen was conflicted inside, he could only allow Feng Shui to make close contact and hold his hand. The two of them moved extremely quickly. They flew over countless rivers and mountains, before finally stopping deep within a mountain range over 20 million kilometers from the capital city. In the very center of the mountain range was a basin. It was surrounded by a chain of towering mountains, while in the center of the basin was a huge lake. Feng Shui brought Jian Chen to the edge of the lake. Only then did she finally let go of his hand. She faced Jian Chen, staring at him nervously and slightly eagerly with her beautiful eyes. She asked, "Kuan Tian, take a good look at this place. Look at the surroundings, look at the tranquil mountain and look at this lake. Do you find it familiar? Do you feel a sense of familiarity? Think carefully. Do your best to recall the past. You often came here in the past. I would be by your side every time. Think about it. Did you ever say this in the past? You said this was the most beautiful place to you, and that you would never forget about everything that had happened here. Kuan Tian, think about it. Think carefully." Towards the end, Feng Shui became more and more agitated. She grabbed Jian Chen by his shoulders, shaking him vigorously. She became rather sad. Jian Chen said nothing. Instead, he glanced around at the surroundings as if he was in thought. He would momentarily stop on every part of the scenery, while his expression would constantly change too. He would furrow his brows in thought at times, while appearing confused at others. He seemed to be doing his best to recall the past. Feng Shui said nothing more. All she did was look at Kuan Tian eagerly and nervously, as if she was giving time for Kuan Tian to remember the past. Jian Chen spent over half a minute doing his best to recall the past, but his eyes remained lost in the end. He shook his head. "I still can't remember anything at all. I have a feeling that I once knew this place, but I really can't remember anything." "A feeling that you once knew this place?" Feng Shui murmured softly as her eyes lit up slightly. Afterwards, she seemed to think of something and she became embarrassed. After a moment of hesitation, she made up her mind and determination flooded her eyes. In the next moment, Feng Shui's clothes slid off her quietly, revealing her smooth body. She leapt into the water gently and swam around happily like a mermaid. "Kuan Tian, come. Come down in the water. Didn't you like this the most?" Feng Shui waved her hand at Jian Chen. Her voice changed as well. It became gentler, filled with charm. "Kuan Tian, what are you staring for? Hurry up and come in and play," Feng Shui continued. Her voice was soft and her face was flushed. She was charming. Jian Chen stared at Feng Shui in a daze. Who knew how troubled he felt inside in that very moment? He had never thought he would see something like this. Kuan Tian and Feng Shui's relationship had actually developed into something like this already. He immediately felt rather regretful. He should not have come here with Feng Shui. Moreover, he understood that he could successfully go all the way with the 10th Hallmaster if he wanted to. However, he would never do something like that. Sigh, why are you standing there like a log? You loved this place the most in the past. As she said that, Feng Shui suddenly pointed a moist finger at Jian Chen. Immediately, a red ribbon appeared out of nowhere and wrapped around Jian Chen's wrist. Just when Feng Shui wanted to drag Jian Chen into the water, she never expected him to suddenly pale. A thin layer of perspiration immediately covered his forehead as he emitted a painful groan. He fell to the ground and rolled around while clutching his head. Clearly, Feng Shui had not anticipated something like this. As she watched Kuan Tian roll around painfully, she was clearly stunned. She could no longer be bothered with trying to stimulate back Kuan Tian's memories anymore. She removed the ribbon with a flip of her hand and she flew out of the lake, creating a great splash in the process. Kuan Tian, what's wrong? The clothes on the grass rose up automatically, covering up Feng Shui in a single instant. She arrived before Kuan Tian, panicking. My head. It hurts. It hurts so much. Jian Chen clutched his head firmly. His face was completely sheet white while the muscles on his face twisted. He seemed to be in great agony. Oh no! I must have accidentally set off the wounds to your soul when I tried to stimulate your memories. Feng Shui was immediately left at a loss as to what to do. Even in the saints' world that was filled with powerful experts, injuries to the soul were extremely difficult to deal with, so let alone the Dark Star world. Kuan Tian, is there any way I can help you? I've specially collected some pills here. They're all helpful to the soul. You should eat them. Feng Shui took out over a dozen bottles from her space ring in a rather frantic manner and poured out a few aromatic pills, feeding them all into Jian Chen's mouth like jelly beans. Perhaps it was due to the pills, but Jian Chen's pain visibly decreased soon after ingesting them. His pale face gradually recovered some color too. Kuan Tian, what's wrong? Do you feel a little better? Feng Shui asked in concern. Only after almost a minute did Jian Chen finally calm down. However, this had clearly caused him quite the damage. Although the pain had receded, his mind was clearly greatly exhausted. He was haggard. He sat on the ground and took in a few deep breaths, before standing up. He said weakly, I'm fine now. It's just that the power of my soul has been severely drained. I need to return immediately to recover. Kuan Tian, then have you remembered something? Feng Shui asked eagerly. No, I still don't remember anything. Apart from that sense of familiarity, I can't remember anything at all. I need to go back. With that, Jian Chen gave Feng Shui no time to ask any more questions. He took off in the air as he tottered about. He seemed like he could fall out of the sky at any time. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.